The Defence of the Bride by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Domenica Campbell. He was coming from the altar when the tocsin rang alarm, with his fair young wife beside him, lovely in her bridal charm. But he was not one to palter with a duty, or to slight the trumpet call of honour for his vantage or delight. Turning from the bride beside him to his stern and martial train, from their midst he summoned to him the brothers of Germain. At the word they stepped before him, 9 strong warriors brave and true, from the youngest to the eldest, Enguerrand to mighty Hugh. Sons of Germain, to your keeping do I yield my bride today. Guard her well as you do love me, guard her well and holily. Dearer than mine own soul to me, you will hold her as your life, 'gainst the guile of seeming friendship and the force of open strife. We will guard her, cried they firmly, and with just another glance on the yearning and despairing in his young wife's countenance, gallant Beaufort strode before them down the aisle and through the door, and a shadow came and lingered where the sunlight stood before. 8 long months the young wife waited, watching from her bridal room for the coming of her husband up the valley forest's gloom. 8 long months the sons of Germain paced the ramparts and the wall, with their hands upon their halberds, ready for the battle call. Then there came the sound of trumpets pealing up the vale below, and a dozen floating banners lit the forest with their glow. And the bride arose like morning when it feels the sunlight nigh, and her smile was like a rainbow flashing from a misty sky. But the eldest son of Germain, lifting voice from off the wall, cried aloud, "It is a stranger's, and not Sir Beaufort's call. Have you ne'er a slighted lover, or a kinsman with a heart base enough to seek his vengeance at the sharp end of the dart?" "There is Sassard of the mountains," answered she withouten guile, "While I wedded at the chancel he stood mocking in the aisle. And my maidens say he swore there that for all my plighted vow they would see me in his castle yet upon Morency's brow." "It is Sassard and no other then," her noble guardian cried. "There is craft in yonder summons," and he rung his sword beside. "To the walls, ye sons of Germain, and as each would hold his life, from the bitter shame of falsehood let us hold our master's wife." "Can you hold her, can you shield her from the breezes that await?" cried the stinging voice of Sassard from his stand beside the gate. "If you have the power to shield her from the sunlight and the wind, you may shield her from stern Sassard when his falchion is untwined." "We can hold her, we can shield her," leapt like fire from off the wall, and young Enguerrand the valiant sprang out before them all. "And if breezes bring dishonour, we will guard her from their breath, though we yield her to the keeping of the sacred arms of death." And with force that never faltered did they guard her all that day, though the strength of triple armies seemed to battle in the fray, the old castle's rugged ramparts holding firm against the foe, as a goodly dike resisteth the whelming billows' flow. But next morning, as the sunlight rose in splendour over all, Hugh the mighty sank heart-wounded in his station on the wall. At the noon the valiant Raoul of the merry eye and heart gave his beauty and his jestings to the foeman's jealous dart. Gallant Maurice next sank faltering with a death wound 'neath his hair, but still fighting on till Sassard pressed across him up the stair. Generous Clement followed after, crying as his spirit passed, "Sons of Germain, to the rescue, and be loyal to the last." Gentle Jasper, lordly Clarence, Sessamine the doughty brand, even Henry, who had yielded ne'er before to mortal hand, one by one they fall and perish, while the vaunting foemen pour through the breach and up the courtway to the very turret's door. Enguerrand and Stephen only now were left of all that 9, to protect the single stairway from the traitor's fell design. But with might as 'twere of 30 did they wield the axe and brand, striving in their desperation the fierce onslaught to withstand. But what man of power so godlike he can stay the billows' rack, or with single-handed weapon hold 100 foemen back? As the sun turned sadly westward, with a wild despairing cry, Stephen bowed his noble forehead and sank down on earth to die. "Aha!" then cried cruel Sassard with his foot upon the stair, "have I come to thee, my boaster?" and he whirled his sword in air. "Thou who pratest of thy power to protect her to the death, what think'st thou now of Sassard and the wind's aspiring breath?" "What I think let this same show you," answered fiery Enguerrand, and he poised his lofty battle-axe with sure and steady hand. "Now as heaven loveth justice, may this deathly weapon fall on the murderer of my brothers and the undoer of us all." With one mighty whirl he sent it, flashing from his hand it came, like the lightning from the heavens in a swirl of awful flame, and betwixt the brows of Sassard and his 2 false eyeballs passed, and the murderer sank before it, like a tree before the blast. "Now ye minions of a traitor, if you look for vengeance, come!" And his voice was like a trumpet when it clangs a victor home. But a cry from far below him rose like thunder upward, "Nay! Let them turn and meet the husband if they hunger for the fray." Oh, the yell that sprang to heaven as that voice swept up the stair, and the slaughter dire that followed in another moment there. From the least unto the greatest, from the henchman to the lord, not a man on all that stairway lived to sheath again his sword. At the top that flame-bound forehead, at the base that blade of fire, 'twas the meeting of 2 tempests in their potency and ire. Ere the moon could falter inward with its pity and its woe, Beaufort saw the path before him unencumbered of the foe. Saw his pathway unencumbered, and strode up and o'er the floor, even to the very threshold of his lovely lady's door. And already in his fancy did he see the golden beam of her locks upon his shoulder, and her sweet eyes' happy gleam. When behold a form upstarting from the shadows at his side, that with naked sword uplifted barred the passage to his bride. It was Enguerrand the dauntless, but with staring eyes and hair, blowing wild about her forehead, pale as snow in moonlit glare. "Ah, my master, we have held her, we have guarded her," he said. "Not a shadow of dishonour has so much as touched her head. 20 wretches lie below there with the brothers of Germain, 20 foemen of her honour that I, Enguerrand, have slain. But one other foe remaineth, one remaineth yet," he cried, "which it fits this hand to punish ere you cross unto your bride." "It is I, Enguerrand," shrieked he, "and as I have slain the rest, so I smite this foeman also," and his sword plunged through his breast. Oh, the horror of that moment! "Art thou mad, my Enguerrand?" cried his master, striving wildly to withdraw the fatal brand. But the stern youth, smiling sadly, started back from his embrace, while a flash like summer lightning flickered direful on his face. "Yes, a traitor, worse than Sassard!" and he pointed down the stair. "For my heart has dared to love her whom my hand defended there. While the others fought for honour, I by passion was made strong. Set your heel upon my bosom, for my soul has done you wrong." But, and here he swayed and faltered till his knee sank on the floor, yet in falling turned his forehead ever toward that silent door. But your warrior hand, my master, may take mine without a stain, for my hand has e'er been loyal, and your enemy is slain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Through the Trees by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Iswa in Belgium in April 2015. If I had known whose face I'd see, above the hedge beside the rose, if I had known whose voice I'd hear make music where the windflower blows, I had not come, I had not come. If I had known his deep I love could make her face so fair to see, if I had known her shy and I could make him stoop so tenderly, I had not come, I had not come. But what knew I? The summer breeze stopped not to cry, "Beware, beware!" The vine wreaths drooping from the trees caught not my sleeve with soft "Take care!" And so I came, and so I came. The roses that his hands have plucked are sweet to me, are death to me. Between them, as through living flames, I pass, I clutch them, crush them, see! The bloom for her, the thorn for me. The brooks leap up with many a song. I once could sing, like them could sing. They fall, 'tis like a sigh among a world of joy and blossoming. Why did I come? Why did I come? The blue sky burns like altar fires. How sweet her eyes beneath her hair! The green earth lights its fragrant pyres. The wild birds rise and flush the air. God looks and smiles, earth is so fair. But ah, 'twixt me and yon bright heaven, two bended heads pass darkling by, and loud above the bird and brook I hear a low "I love," and I, and hide my face. Ah, God, why, why? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Nightingale by Anna Katharine Green. Recorded for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. The Nightingale. And now soft night hath taken her seat on high, out-breathing balmy peace over all the land. Silent in sleep the dimpled meadows lie, like tired children soothed by mother's hand. Throughout the valley hums the zephyr bland, charming the roses from their passionate dreams, to hear the wild and melancholy streams pulse to the waving of its mystic wand, while large and low leans down the mellow moon, whose whitely blazing urn doth make a silver noon. But hark! What heavenly sound is this that now steals like a dream adown the fragrant vale, or like a thought across a maiden's brow that brings a lambent flush upon the pale? It is the heart song of the nightingale, which yearns forever upward in a mist of subtle sadness, clouding all who list with softened shadows of her secret ale, and now so purely fills the silence clear. Great nature seems to hush her beating heart to hear. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Tower of Bouverie by Anna Katharine Green. Hand. Fill the horn unto the brim, cried the Lord of Bouverie. Courtier gay and warrior grim, all who feast this day with me, whatsoever his degree, fill ye, fill to Bouverie. Bounteously the red wine ran, up they rose unto a man. Here's to triumph in the wars, here's to pleasure in our halls, here's to Turkish scimitars hanging on our English walls. Here's to peace, and here's to see ere another week can flee a fair bride in Bouverie. Loud the answering shout goes up, man by man they drain the cup, Monteith's earl and Duffield's lord, Hamon of the bloody sword, even gentle Hugh of Dee and the squire of Enderby, all drink to Bouverie. All, say I? Hold, I am wrong. One there was amid that throng, one, just one, who started back, tossed to heaven his tresses black, would not drink to Bouverie. One alone, ah, who is he dares slight pledge of Bouverie? Is it stalwart Clarimaux of the giant arm and knee, Holbert's earl, or scornful Vaux, Jasper, prince of chivalry? No, ah no, too young to be one amongst such warriors free, neither lord nor chieftain he. Rupert then of careless eye, reckless if he live or die? Eustace, loving more his wit than the head producing it? No, ah no, not one of these, with their jests and mummeries, but a simple squire no more, is the man who thus before all the world dares Bouverie. Just a simple squire, but oh, what a fire his glances show! What a gesture of command speaks in his uplifted hand, as he puts the beaker back, crying, "Bring no pledge to me, though the castle fall in wrack, drink I no such mockery." But the master with a bound grasps the slighted goblet round, draws his sword, and "Drink or die," cries aloud and threateningly, whirling up his blade on high. From the goblet's tempting rim to the falchion fierce and grim, quickly passed the stripling's eye. Sweet is life to youthful hearts, chill the dreaded angel's darts. Sweet is life and harsh is death, sweet the sunshine's fervid breath, and the winds that round us fly. In his hand he took the cup, like a wave the cry leaps up, "Long live Bouverie to wield sword of might in hall and field!" "Pledge and drink," the baron cried. "I will pledge," the youth replied, and his eye flashed like a star in the gulf of night afar. "I will pledge," and o'er his head raised the goblet gleaming red. Here's to triumph in the wars, here's to pleasure in our halls, here's to Turkish scimitars hanging on our English walls. Here's to peace, and here's to see, ere another week can flee, a dead bride in Bouverie. Clanging loud the goblet falls, he has flung it at the walls, and a silence like a pall for a moment shrouds the hall. Then a sudden cry of "Shame!" curls about him like a flame, and "Who art thou?" shriek they all, "Devil's imp or dog abhorred, hissing snake or churchyard ghoul, that you come to scare the soul of the baron at his board?" But the master cries aloud with a glance and gesture proud, "Whosoever he may be, fool or devil, by my sword, he shall straight undo that word, or I am no Bouverie. By thy life and by thy sword, but I'll not undo my word. Gentle dame and fair is she, surly lord and spiteful he. Better see her beauty dead than such sorrow on her head. Die then, lady, die and be laid to rest in Bouverie, ere such evil come to thee." Oh, to slay him where he stood! Eager flashed an hundred swords, but the baron's potent mood held them back withouten words. Demon, imp, or earth-born fool, scum of hell, or Paynim's tool, what to you is he or she? What to you her misery? What the maid of Bouverie? What the shrine is to the priest, what his shield is to the knight, what the sun is to the east, wearying for the morning light, what the star is to the sea, to my humbleness is she, glorious star of Bouverie. "Oh ho!" then the Baron cried, with a laugh of scornful pride, "By the memory of our sires! But he loves, this squire of squires, loves our child of Bouverie." "Oh ho!" laughed they down the hall, Knights and courtiers one and all, "Loves our Lady Bouverie." "By my troth," cried he again, "but my Lord of Everden Little recketh in his pride What a rival eyes his bride. Doughty warrior though he be, He would tremble, sirs, pardie, Could he see the youthful squire That sits down before his fire." "Ho ho!" laughed they, in their glee, "Rival claims in Bouverie!" "Youthful squires have hearts of steel," Quoth the stripling, lifting higher His pure brow of lambent fire, With a look of dauntless zeal. "Not a noble in the land Would do for the lady's hand What the simple youth you see Would do for her of Bouverie. "Would you tilt a knightly lance 'Gainst yon chapel's broad expanse? Mount the master's steed and clear With one bound the narrow weir, That you boast so loud and free?" "I would die for her," said he, "Tender maid of Bouverie." "Ho then! it were surely ill One should balk you in your will," Sneering cried his fiery lord, Raising high his mighty sword. But the youth with smile of scorn, And an aspect like the morn, Met its sheen unflinchingly. "You do show me grace," cried he, "Haughty chief of Bouverie." "Is it so?" and in disdain Fell that falchion once again. "Then by heaven that made us all, Will we tip that grace with gall." And his gaze ran down the hall. "Hugh of Elbert, to the tower, Rouse my daughter in her bower, Tell her we would see her here, Ere yon eagle circling high O'er our walls can disappear In his realm of upper sky." Woman's scorn has stinging point, Pierces keenly through the joint. We will see if he who eyes All unmoved the falchion rise, Can with equal spirit dare The disdain of lady fair. But the young man with a cry Is already at his knee, Lifting hands impetuously. "Baron Bouverie, let me die, Slay me if thou wilt," he said, "But oh spare the tender maid, Spare the maid of Bouverie." "Do you fear her scorn so much?" Cried the baron, while a smile, Or what men would fain call such, Smote his iron lip the while. "More than death," the young man said, And a shadow dark and dread Fell upon his youthful head. "Do you think that she will be All so harsh?" quoth Hugh of Dee In the ear of Enderby. "Frail as harebell swinging lone On some turret's crumbling stone, Do you think that he need fear Such right bitter words to hear?" But the baron's awful eye Gloomed upon him for reply, And as if a spell were hung On each daring lip and tongue, Silent grew both knight and lord, Every eye with one accord Fixed in close expectancy On the face of Bouverie. When hark, hark, from where the door Wavers restless o'er the floor, Breaks a rustle and a stir Like the breeze in mountain fir. And there welleth into view From the darkness dim and drear A fair face of light and dew, And the noble maid is here. Oh, is this the haughty dame Whose proud part it is to shame With her scorn the stripling's love, And his heart with anguish move? This shy maiden pale and sweet, With the timid stepping feet, And an eye like violets hid Underneath each fearful lid? Pausing in the narrow door Full within the view of all, One slow smile she sends before Her fair presence down the hall. Then as floats a cloud of snow Into some fierce sunset's glow, Through the crowd she softly sped, And bent low her gentle head 'Gainst her haughty father's knee. Fair and frail, ah, who is he Would cast shadow over thee, Beauteous flower of Bouverie? Child of Bouverie, and heir To the broad lands of Quemair, Mistress of Dumont's fair bowers, Gaverson and Heathcote's towers, I have called you here to fling Scorn upon a worthless thing. Straight she looked up, wondering. "If it be a worthless thing, As you say, Lord Bouverie, Little need is there to fling Scorn upon it," muttered she. "If I call you from your dreams to set down my cup, it seems you to do so," thundered he. Like a summer snowdrop spurned by a wind too strong for it, tremblingly her forehead turned from that bitter blowing wit. "Let me know your will," she said, and her lovely modest head on her bosom faltered. "It is this," and heavily on her arm his right hand fell, "if you be of mine 'tis well, you will answer worthily. Some one in this company hath dared boast his love for thee, heiress of proud Bouverie," flushed her cheek like red rose tree. "Not a lord?" The long lash fell like leaf across its flower. "Not a warrior?" Ah, what spell holds the maiden in its power! "Warrior lord had met my sword, but a woman's mocking word is the only answer meet for a spurless squire, I weet." For a spurless squire? Oh, how her lips and forehead glow, how the mounting rapture flies from her chin unto her eyes! Turning round with eager gaze on the youth she casts her eye, and her smile is like a haze spreading o'er the roseate sky. "By my soul," the baron cries, "but this scorn wears curious guise." And his teeth with iron grip close upon his nether lip. Oh, the sire is dread to see, but a high tranquillity shrines the maid of Bouverie. "Will you curse him, girl, or no?" shrieked the baron, looming o'er her. "Curse me, lady," whispered low he who knelt in homage for her. But the tender maiden stood trembling in the rushing flood, whelming her sweet womanhood. "'Tis but shame," quoth Hugh of Dee, "let her pass, Lord Bouverie. Not for stars is it, I ween, to proclaim their state serene." But the baron straight replied, "Stars that tremble where they bide Are not stars with which to crown ancient Bouverie's proud renown." At which, like some lily waking from its moonlit dreams to find Earth and air around it quaking, in a range of gusty wind, from her breast the maiden raised to his face her glance amazed, and her lips paled visibly. Kneeling lowly at his knee, "Ask me what you will," said she, "much would Clare of Bouverie do, but this one thing, father, know." Know? And like a tiger stung by the hunter's bitter dart, from her side he backward sprung, eyes to heaven and hand to heart. "What? And have I then come back from the Paynim's fierce attack to find treason in my home? Saints of heaven, have I come from the desert's wasting dearth, from the raging of the sea, from the tempest's enmity, to find shame upon my hearth?" "Shame? Not so," cried Hugh of Dee. "Never shame," said Enderby. "Love and patient hope and truth," spake in haste the gallant youth. "But not shame, Lord Bouverie." "Love and sorrow," whispered she. "Only that, Lord Bouverie." But as he might spurn a cur, from his side he spurned her. "Shame and worse than shame to me, may the heavens right instantly Smite thee, curse of Bouverie." Then while horror falls on all in that dismal crowded hall, Loud he clanked his ringing spur with an awful look at her, through the dizzy moments' blur. "Take her hence," he loudly cried, "Everden has lost his bride. Fit for naught but death, her shame Ne'er shall soil a warrior's name. Take her hence, no more to me than this broken sword is she, Henceforth here in Bouverie." And his mighty blade he drew, Brake it on his knee in two, Cast it from him down the hall, Lifted voice above them all, "No more than that sword to me, As I am Lord Bouverie." But at that an awful joy Flushed the forehead of the boy. "What the master flings aside One may surely have," he cried, And with just a single bound Plucked the falchion from the ground. "What the father gives to shame, Love may freely, fully claim." And in sight of each man there To his breast he drew her fair, Wild, wan face with passionate care. But the baron leaping back Struck the yearning twain apart, As the lightning in its track Open smites the sunset's heart. "Do you claim her so, pardie? By my life, but we will see, daring cur of Bouverie. Flowers like these, though warped and dead, are not weeds, he fiercely said. If you think to pluck from me this same rose of Bouverie, by my life and by my wit, you will have to climb for it. And he raised his hand on high, pointed through the casement nigh to his turrets 'gainst the sky. In the top of yonder tower lies my lady daughter's bower. If you love her as you say, mount and pluck her thence away, scarce so high as stars may be. It will do, I wot, quoth he, and his smile gloomed fearfully. Mount the tower! From each man's tongue one fierce cry of horror sprung. Mount the tower! Why, it is death! And the maiden's startled breath on her pale lip faltereth. But the young man looming higher eyes his lord with glance of fire. Will you give her me to wife if I win that steep with life? Freely as yon heaven yields rain and sunshine to the fields. Then as heaven loveth truth, cometh joy or cometh ruth, will I dare it, cried the youth. Oh, will heaven look upon such a deed beneath the sun? 90 awful feet the steep towers above the donjon keep. 90 feet of rugged stone, crumbling old and ivy grown, and each foot from top to pave a relentless yawning grave. But the young man at its base sees no more that steep surface, sees no more the eager death biding him with hungry breath. For upon the turret's height they have placed the lady bright, and his gaze is fixed upon that dear head against the sun, whither all his hopes have run. O Lord Bouverie, swear to me, if I win her thus from thee, she shall be mine own for aye, wife and mistress from this day. If you win her thus from me, answered he of Bouverie, by my life, but she shall be thine until the judgment day. Then may heaven be my aid, and the right prevail, he said, and he laid his hand in power on the base of that rude tower. Through the crowd an icy chill shot and passed, and all was still. If I fail, let no man ever say I flinched from the endeavor. And he drew his body's weight up beyond the massive gate. If I fail, let no man's lip dare to taunt her with the slip. And he mounted for their eyes unto where the turrets rise. If I fail, but at that word her sweet voice above was heard, and he brake his speech in two. But I will not fail, look you. And with deathless zeal he bent will and strength to the ascent, setting now a steady foot on the ivy's clinging root, grasping now the slippery edge of some narrow casement's ledge, arm upstretched and head back thrown, as if her dear eyes alone drew him up those heights of stone. O ye heavens, what abyss, if his daring hand should miss, if the ivy's treacherous root should give way beneath his foot. Many a gleam of horror flies through that watching maiden's eyes. Many a noble heart below shudders in an awful woe. If that daring hand should miss, saints of heaven, what abyss! But he mounts up yet for all, past the gap within the wall, past the barbicane's high crest, past the swallow's hidden nest, up till heart and watching eye faint and follow wearily, till the swallows swooping whirl round and round in dizzy swirl, and the clouds swim dreamily. Slower now, but steady still, how the vines about him thrill! Up another foot, and lo! how his form sways to and fro. Up one more, and he whose breast touch of gentleness doth know, drops his eyelids from the rest. Further still, and lord and knight sink to ground in wild affright. Only he of iron will, Baron Bouverie, dares look still, dares to mark that figure high, swinging between earth and sky, past their help and past recall, 80 feet above them all. He has gained the turret's brow, just beneath the lady now, and his yearning arms reach high, and her yearning arms reach low, but their two hands, ah, so nigh, cannot join. Aha, then cries the fierce lord without disguise, in another moment more this same silly sport is o'er. And he trims his iron lip for the cheer and awful smile that shall hail the fatal slip from that huge terrific pile. But a sudden curse instead forces way betwixt his teeth, for the maiden overhead, leaning to the youth beneath, hath let down her scarf's deep fold, and by its same help, behold, he has struggled upward now, level to the turret's brow. "O Lord Bouverie, swear to me that he lives," cried Hugh of Dee. 50 candles large and white to Our Lady's shrine to night, if he wins the turret height," clamored noble Enderby. But the baron with his eyes stretched and fixed upon the skies answers not by deed or word, anxious knight or fearful lord. All his gaze is on the man, struggling, fainting in the span of his lady's arm upon that last awful verge of stone. Will he clear it? Dare he? Can it indeed be done by man? Ha, ha, he slips, he falls, but no. It was but the final throw of his body ere he put o'er the ledge his fainting foot. "'Tis no squire of mine," then cried the fierce master in his pride, "but some imp from hell we see this same day in Bouverie." But another moment, and with a twist of foot and hand, the brave stripling clears the edge of the turret's battled ledge, and they see him leaning warm on his lovely lady's arm, blessed at last and safe from harm. Oh, was ever such emprise seen before by mortal eyes? Like the rising of the sea sprang the shout of victory, like the rising of the sea when the heart of nature breaks, or the thunder when it speaks. But the baron with a bound jumped in anger from the ground, and his glance flashed fiercely round. "Ay, but ye do well to shout ere the sport is full played out. He has mounted up, I own, and a gallant deed 'tis too. But, my lords, remember you that he has not yet come down." "Noble sir, what would you do?" cried out Vaux and Hayman too, leaping swiftly into view. But the baron, smiting hard with his heel upon the sward, cried, "As he has gone, I swear he shall come again, or ne'er set his foot again to ground from yon turret's narrow bound." But at that, brave Clarimaux, seizing hold of mighty Vaux, sprang before him in the way. "Baron Bouverie," he said, "you must o'er my body tread if you close that door to day." "Yes, and mine," re-echoed Wide, and stern Duffield leaped beside. "We can look on gallant deeds, noble contests, lordly meeds, but by heaven that base heart bleeds that would force these eyes to see grievous wrong and perjury." "Do you think then," cried his lord, "that we bend to such as ye, that because we lack our sword we will do your will?" shrieked he. And with just one mighty bound cleft the swaying crowd around, and stood breathing death before the grim turret's narrow door. When, ah, what is this that meets him upon the threshold stone? What this vision fair which greets him with tender arms outthrown? Eye of fire and cheek of rose, lip where every rapture glows. Can this be the maiden frail that but one short hour before lay like broken lily pale on the castle's stony floor? With a cry he backward sped, but the maiden, springing, laid on his breast her joyous head, smiling on him undismayed. "Father, father, will you be harsher then than destiny?" And her clinging eager arm crept about him live and warm with a wild and nameless charm. But he like some rock that feels all unmoved the wind's appeals, for a moment stood unswayed, gazing down upon the maid. But as closer to his breast that pure cheek and forehead pressed, gentler aspects took the place of the frowns upon his face, and a something like a sigh shook his bosom heavily. Starting back with sudden speed, from his neck her arms he freed, and upon that crowd around fixed his haughty glance profound. "Noble lords and sirs," he cried, "we have looked this day upon a great deed beneath the sun, and our soul is satisfied. But one thing remaineth yet, which 'twere treason to forget." And he caught with fervor up from the page beside his cup. 'Tis the pledge which crowneth all gallant acts in field and hall. Then while each man held his breath, in a doubt 'twixt life and death, back he tossed his head on high, raised the goblet towards the sky, and spake outright potently, "Here's to triumph in the wars, here's to pleasure in our halls, here's to Turkish scimitars hanging on our English walls. Here's to courage though it be in a squire of low degree, here's to love and here's to see, ere another day can flee, these two wed in Bouverie." End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Premonition by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Sinead Vaughan. The sweetest hour in all love's wondrous story, when hope first whispers of the coming glory. A sudden strange unfolding in the cheerful noontide glare, a sudden passionate heaving in the bosom of the air. The sense of something coming, mysterious and dread, the lightning for its crowning, the thunder for its tread. A whisper in the breezes, one has not heard before, a longing in the billow, a yearning in the shore, a bubbling up of life from every wayside thing, a meaning in the dip of even a swallow's wing. A fear as if the morrow would ope some hidden portal, a joy as if the feet stood as the gate immortal. An angel in the pathway to every common goal, a widening of the outlook that opens on the soul. A sound of song at midnight, a mist of dreams at noon, a tear upon the eyelash, the lips smile might impugn. A coming back of childhood when morning suns are bright, to find yourself a woman upon your knees at night. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In Light, in Night by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. In light, in night. Dark against the deepening skies, frosty with stars, see I the bars of a weird cross arise. How glooms the night away! Winds are abroad, waves of the ford boom out a dismal lay. Shrine wet with dew and tears, here will I rest, easing a breast worn by despair and fears. Not on the brow of her who walks in light, while I in night let thy long shadow stir. Rather across this heart let it be laid, shade after shade, gloom hath with her no part. While in his sight her soul greatens and glows, till her heart's rose opes at his fond control. I clasp the cross and cry, "Strength, Holy Rood!" Kiss the cold wood, while at its foot I lie. Angel whose wings I see shift amongst the stars, make these chill bars ladders of light for me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Three Letters by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Iswa, in Belgium, in April 2015. 1. From him to her. Sweet, when I gave my troth to you, I loved you, or imagined so. But winds may change, and clouds that blew to eastward at the morn may blow toward the west by noon, you know. 'Tis not that you are grown less fair. A rose is a rose to me, but he who wanders on to where the pensive violet clusters are may chance forget the rose, you see. and I have wandered. There, 'tis out. However fickle, false, or wrong, you cannot say I gave to doubt the master music of that song Joy sings in breasts where hopes belong. You cannot say I was not true to truth, if not to constancy, that I still sought to quaff the dew from off the rose, while secretly I groped for what more pleased me. Nor will you, being sweet as fair, condemn that other fair one's sweetness, nor by those charms which make so rare your own pure face, disdain the meetness of loving grace in its completeness. For beauty, beauty is, and, well, a man must worship where he must. Yet if you chose to hold me, Belle, why, I am yours. I would be just, I pledged, and will fulfill my trust. And if I wed, I will be true. You need not fear. The wave which holds a lily up to all men's view scarce spots the silver of its folds with restless wash of secret molds. Then tell me, sweet, is't yes or no? A marriage ring or short farewell? Do you still love me, or love so you can forgive? The wedding bell 'gins ringing. Then what say you? Tell. 2. From her to him. What should I say but farewell? Is the rose a thing too slight to stand alone and still when the wind leaves it? Shall a flower that grows in God's clear light more dearly love the thrill of its own petals than the happy sound of breezes singing, though their songs should be for some sweet other blossom far away, that is no rose to lose them? No, the bliss of him to whom I gave my bliss one day is much more precious than his troth to me. I scarce would wish his face again to see, its happy smile and tender shine to miss. Then of the twain it is not yes, but no, and with the no, farewell. May she, your love, so live in joy and so in beauty move, you never may in all your dreams forget heaven blooms for you within the violet. 3. From him to her. Ah, Rose, my love, my queen, my gentle, faithful, tender heart, the one fair woman I have seen with soul to feel for others' smart. Didst think that I who once had known thy wild rose touch could wander on? That any blossom 'neath the sun, though crowned with heavenly grace and power, could fairer seem to me than one whose blushes are the summer's dower? That daintiest violets in the world could rival rosebuds half unfurled? Didst think, but no, thou didst not think, thou didst but love, O sweet, O wife, my one firm hold upon the brink of that deep gulf which we call life, would thou couldst know my joy to find this angel living in thy mind. For, sweet, I love thee, loved thee so, but oh, so feared to trust my love, who am no saint and needs must know how false the fairest face can prove, how oft beneath the softest sigh heaves woman's heart of vanity. And soul yields not but to its own, and I did love thee with my soul. A stream sings on by weed and stone, but ocean billows long to roll the strength and glory of the seas upon their shore of mysteries. And thou wert shore and all to me, my star, my crown, my calm retreat, so dear that I could bear to pain thy heart to learn its secret sweet. Canst pardon then? O sunny shore, a whole sea waits to tell thee more. Thou wilt not scorn me? Ah, my pen slips at the wild thought to the floor. Naught else but eyes can plead, love, when the ghost of death stands in the door. Then read what I have writ, and say if love can pardon love alway. Thou dost not speak. O sweet, O love, it were not much to die for thee, but live and know not God above could give my heaven back to me. Ah, canst thou doom it? What, yes? No! O God, mayst thou but pardon so! End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Pearls by Anna Katharine Green. LibriVox.org. The wave that floods the trembling shore And desolates the strand, In ebbing leaves, 'mid froth and wreck, A shell upon the sand. So troubles oft o'erwhelm the soul, And shake the constant mind, That in retreating leave a pearl Of memory behind. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Shadows by Anna Katharine Green. LibriVox.org. A zephyr moves the maple trees, And straightway o'er the grass The shadows of their branches shift, love, but do not pass. So, though with time a change may come, Within my steadfast heart The shadow of thy form may stir, But cannot, love, depart. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Paul Isham by Anna Katharine Green. LibriVox.org by Kay Hand. When first Paul Isham crossed the fields to woo Sweet Gladys Darrell in her humble home, 'Twas deemed the veriest marvel of the year By all our country gossips. True, said they, she has some beauty, Is not quite devoid of grace in speech and bearing, Is both young and gentle tempered, But despite all this, a match unworthy Of his name and wealth, his varied learning And a culture won by years of foreign travel. He it was who built the sumptuous mansion which you see Rise in the vale below us. There in state as lonely as methinks 'Tis cheerful now, he lived on his return From o'er the seas. Respected, courted somewhat, but unmoved By woman's smile from his accustomed mien Of proud composure, till his glances fell On pretty Gladys where she stood one day Amid her fellows. As a wilding rose discovered in a garden Draws the gaze, and seems in its meek loveliness More fair than all its prouder sisters, so to him She seemed the choicest blossom of them all, A treasure past computing. For a year he wooed her, then as doth the strong man woo His last and dearest blessing from the fates, And at the year's end won her. Then to him returned the morning freshness of his youth, Hope and the joy of life. She was to him a breath of spring across the winter rime, And in her beauty he was wont to see Something akin to all that sweetest is In nature's handiwork, when from the snow The crocus blossoms, and the earth beguiled Yields up her hoarded treasures to the sun And all mankind rejoices. But of late he had perceived a certain change in her. The bud which gazes fearless on the sky Droops as its being richens. So with her, across whose girlish merriment Had crept the hush of feeling and the calm of thought. Less often rang the songs that once had seemed Surcharged with laughter like the voice of brooks. But if by chance they fell upon the ear They lingered there, like waves which vainly seek To utter all the story of the sea And die in music with the tale untold. Less frequent shone the smile upon her lips, But when it came 'twas sweeter than before, As the lone ray that wanders through a glen, Suggesting beauties it but half reveals, Is lovelier than the sunshine on the lea. And when Paul Isham saw all this he said, "The summer grows upon my darling's heart, Ripening her woman's nature." June was here, and in a month 'twas thought The marriage peal would ring from Benton church bells. In the house beyond the maples there was heard at times Unwonted sounds, as though its generous lord Was making preparation for his bride. And every evening when the sun was low And earth and air were radiant, he was seen Crossing the meadow to his Gladys' home Beneath the mountain. Oft he passed alone, but oftener still In company with Ralph, a youthful brother, Who had haply come some 2 months since From his far home in town, to stray again Among remembered scenes, and with man's eyes Behold the sacred spots where in his dreamy childhood he had stood, And seen the visions of his future life Flit by in sun and shadow. But this eve it pleased Paul Isham to go forth alone To meet with Gladys. For all through the day the thought of her had called a rainbow forth from every cloud of care, and much he yearned for her dear presence. Oh, the toils of life! How small they seem when love's resistless tide sweeps brightly o'er them! Like the scattered stones within a mountain streamlet, they but serve to strike the hidden music from its flow and make its sparkle visible. A copse full of soft shadows and sun-lighted glades lay in his path. Here he was wont to pause and cull some woodland blossom from the mold to lay within her palm, that it might speak such words as he in his heart reverence found halt in the utterance. But to-night his thoughts sprang winged to his lips, his very love seemed given for inspiration, and he trod hastily onward, feeling in his soul a yearning like the yearning of a wave that sees the shore stretch beautiful beyond it. He found her pacing o'er the sunlit lawn, lost in a dream that brought the fitful blood in tremor to her cheek, and lent withal to her high bearing such a tender grace, no moonbeam sleeping in a chancel's dusk, amid the splendor of emblazoned gules, could be more fair or sweetlier blend in one the light of heaven and the glow of earth. "Gladys," he said, and smiling drew her hand closely in his, "my heart is full to-night, full of true love for you, dear, as mine eyes are full of your rare beauty. Scarce can I, in my great happiness and glad content, believe that I have known you but a year, who now are joy, love, hope, and heaven to me, that once knew none of these. For I have had through all my years a lonesome life and dark, with overmuch of sorrow, and I stand just now where yonder hills stood at the dawn, twixt night and sunshine, in the future thee, but in the past a long array of griefs, crushed hopes, ambitions lost, sweet friendship made, a mockery and a snare, a life of woe without a love to comfort. I've a fancy, a strange wild fancy, that we two were friends long, long ago in an existence past, and now but half remembered. In your face I found no strangeness when I first beheld you, only the blossoming of some vague dream into sweet life and glad reality. I do remember how in vain that day I sought for that which had suggested you and made your glance familiar, how my thoughts flew back in wavering flight along the years, e'en to the smile upon my mother's lips when in her arms I lay a little child, unconscious of my bliss, and felt my thoughts float on the music of her voice until they stranded on the flowery shores of sleep. But though her loveliness was like a breath of sunset glory on a silver cloud, it was not yours. You lost your mother, Paul? Yes, Gladys, and with her the roseate hues which make the morn of childhood beautiful. Thereafter life took sterner shades and thrilled but to one touch, ambitions. "I will be great," was my watchword for the day, and when at eve I laid my head to rest, 'twas still, "I will be great." And so I toiled, struggled and anguished for a space of years along the rugged steeps which lead to fame, feeling the need of love wax strong within as my ways thickened. Why, in those hard days the least child's smile would stir me to the heart like far-off music, and a gentle word, uttered in merest welcome or farewell, had power to soothe me like a breeze which brings the south upon its pinions. Marvel not that such slight things had power to move me. Know that he who steps on stones is glad to feel the smallest spray of moss beneath his feet. But Gladys, I was pressing with the crowd, and with the crowd I faltered. Not for me to jostle bruise and bruising to the goal where, on the rocky pinnacles of fame, cluster the living garlands. So that hope died also, and I buried it and stood awhile above its grave, then went on my way, still without love or comfort. Ceasing there, he gazed a moment on her half-turned cheek and lowered lashes, marveling at the tears within her eyes, but finding her withal more lovely to behold than when the rose lived in perpetual summer on her cheek. For beauty such as hers is like a breath of distant music stealing through the hush of fragrant gardens, and like music draws its rarest charm from gentle melancholy. But even a pearl will flush with sudden lights if but the sun fall on it, so the cheek which but a moment since was pale as snow, grew dazzling with its shifting play of flame, even as he gazed upon it, and the lips which had been very silent woke and said, "And was there not one then, of all your friends, whose frank affection could redeem the loss of those sad years? Though joy and hope were gone, you had a brother, Paul." "True, Gladys, true, but we were bred in separate homes, and he has ever lived 'neath happier skies than I, and known less sorrow. Born for joy alone, he thrids the world as sunshine thrids a wood, and all men love him, as in weal or woe they never yet have loved or cherished me. But, child, you weep. Ah, have I then with words moved you so deeply, Gladys? Know you not that such a joy as lives within me now can, like the strings of the Aeolian harp, draw music from the roughest wind that blows from those past hours of sorrow? Weep no more, or weep for joy alone." "Alas!" she cried, "the eye that pierces straightly to the future can never weep for joy." "The future, Gladys?" "Yes." And a sad smile flickered through her tears, like a faint rainbow from a summer shower, which ere it arches 'gins to fade away. "Yon sky blooms very rosily," she said. "But look you where the shadowy palm of night steals up to pluck the roses. Hark," she cried, "hear how the brooks below us in the woods twang on the stones. Like strings of silver bells they laugh and sport as if all time were theirs, whereas already by their careless waves the hot-mouthed summer stoops her down to drink the draught that is their death. Oh," she said, "full many a vessel threads the gates of morn, with spreading sails and gold upon its prow, that ere the eve will bend beneath the storm. And we, how know we if our moments run to break on joy or sorrow? We can hope, but hope itself is born of doubt, my friend, always in bud, but never quite a flower." "True, Gladys, but the trouble in your eyes hath borrowed darkness from a surer fear than this vague terror of an unknown morrow. Then trust me with it, let me bear it for you. Have I not vowed within mine inmost soul to hold you much more precious than the world, yes, as the very blood within my veins, and will you not then trust me?" "Trust you?" she cried. "Would unto God," she whispered, "would to God all things came easy as my trust in you." "Then speak, I do constrain you, by your love I do constrain you, Gladys." "Silent yet?" "Nay, then," he said, and smiling laid his hands with tender care on either troubled cheek. "I'll read your sorrows where I've read your joys, even in your eyes, beloved." But she, like one struck to the heart by some quick shame or grief, shrank trembling back nor met his gaze with hers, but bowed her head and prayed him to forbear, saying that on the morrow if he willed, she would disclose him all her secret care, but that for this one day she must crave patience. But ah, when morrow came and he returned to that same spot beneath the woodland trees, it was to find not Gladys, but a letter lying upon their simple rustic seat, in which with many cries for his forgiveness she told him all her heart. How for long weeks the truth had grown upon her as a cloud grows o'er the sun, that not as he loved her could she love him. That liking and respect were not what he desired, nor what she had hoped alone to give him when she pledged hand unto hand and willing heart to heart. And yet that these were all she truly had to give for so great love as he gave her. And how this knowledge had o'ershadowed her, filling her nights with anguish and her days with heavy shame and struggle, till her life grew bitter to her, and his words like swords cleft her and left deep wounds that would not heal. And how in honor to his noble faith she could no more deceive him, though her heart, her woman's fearful, trembling heart should break with anguish for his sorrow. "Oh," she wrote, "far livelier had I died in my first youth than lived to be a heavy grief to one so noble and so loving. Blame me not, for I have wrestled with my heart as one wrestles with fate itself, and all in vain." It was a deadly blow. A blow like that, which swooping unawares from out the night dashes a man from some high starlit peak into a void of cold and hurrying waves. 'Twas not the loss alone. In that wild hour of first resistance, anguish, and despair, he felt he could have borne her simple loss so God had taken her. But loss of love? Loss of belief in all the radiant past, of hope in years to come? Ah, who but those whose lives have felt the shock of utter wreck can rightly speak of what that hour of doom was to this man of sorrow? Or when later, she with her sweet face worn by bitter tears, her young form trembling and her hands outstretched, came stealing through the forest to his side, and kneeling at his feet entreated him to look on her with pity and not blame, for she had never meant to do him wrong, what tongue can tell the feelings of his heart, as taking that bright head between his hands, he looked upon her face and gently said, "Indeed, indeed, I do not blame you, Gladys. God knows I love you with too deep a love to seek to rob you for my selfish ends of that dear right which gives to woman's vow its heart significance. Nor would I seek by any plea of loss and hope or love to make your loss the greater. But, dear child, there yet is left to manhood one true plea, the plea of your own happiness. For, child, I know that I can make you happy. There is that hid in this breast which needs must call from yours some echo in the years that are to come. And Gladys, Gladys, though you know it not, no other man can give what I have given, nor were it well he should. It is your youth which has been speaking. Youth has needs, I know, and headlong yearnings like the mountain streams that rush adown the nearest path they find to meet the sounding river. But, O child, in womanhood the heart is like the sea, deep, deep, and self-contained, but yearning still through all its mighty billows for a shore to break in strength upon. Remember this, and by the stately womanhood I see budding within the gentle girl I love, pause ere it be too late." And with the gleam of something like a smile upon his lips, he held his hand out, whispering in her ear, "If be you cannot answer me for tears, but lay your hand, though e'er so light, on mine, and I shall understand." But she, as though made frantic by her helplessness and grief, struck her two palms together as in prayer, and stood there murmuring with white lips, "O Christ, help me! Thou who renouncedst my will and life, help me this hour." Then unto him there came an awful change, and from her side he turned away and hunted slowly for the sun, like one whom God has blinded. "Child," said he, "you have not told me all." "No, no," she cried, "I have not told you all." And bowing down, as though she fain had knelt before his face, she whispered of another love than his, which had, though all unconscious, caught her heart within its subtle radiance. "Oh," she said, "I meant to be most true, but when he came, and when he spake and looked on me and smiled, I know not how but all my life seemed changed. And yet he came, and I for very shame could not forbid his coming. How could I, since you were blind and he had said no word save as friends speak or brothers? Bear with me, I am most weak, but for your sake will strive, yes, and will conquer, so you send him hence, where we may meet him never." Send him hence? I send him hence? As friends speak or as brothers? You tremble so I cannot understand. As brothers, Gladys, brothers? And she saw a stony pallor steal across his face, and felt his hand fall heavy on his breast, as he had had a blow too dread for words. "Ah, my false heart, what hast thou done?" she moaned, and drawing nearer touched his sleeve and strove to look upon his face, and called him Paul, dear Paul, and laid her head against his arm, sobbing, "I am to be your wife, O Paul, hear me, your wife." But he in no wise moved, answered her not save with the single word that fell as hopes fall, or as if all life went with it, and that word was Ralph. She heard and thrilled through all her being like a harp touched in the passing, while across her lip a light passed and upon her tearful cheek rested, as though the very name had power to rouse her beauty, as a tremulous wind opens unto its depths a wildwood flower. But he who bent above her shivered once through all his frame, and glancing down unloosed his hands from off his arm and turned away blindly toward the shadows. Then once more did Gladys in an ecstasy of pain entreat him for a word, a look, a sign of his forgiveness, striving hard to break the spell which bound him, holding out her hands and telling o'er her simple tale again, with many words of sorrow and remorse and hard self-accusation. Till at last he turned and looked upon her with a sigh, and said, " Poor child !" And still as in a dream, once more, " Poor child !" And so passed by and moved heavily away into the shadowy dusk. And lo, as thus he went, far in the west the last faint crimson died, while chill and keen a wind came winging through the gates of night, and o'er the valley blew until the trees bowed down their heads and all was dark and drear, where but an hour ago was bloom and joy, sunshine and color and the song of birds. It was the end, or ere 3 days had passed, this letter, breathing love's renunciation, was placed in Gladys's hand. Dear child, you will forgive me that I do not come to say farewell, since farewell must be said. You will forgive me, Gladys. It is meet that I should go. I love you, dear, too much to wed you. 'Twere not well indeed that I, who feel the pressure of my years heavily at times, should mate with one so young the violets are blowing in her life. Then take this boon from me and hold it choice, as I have held it while I called it mine. Take back yourself, dear, not in grief but peace, for I am blessed only in your joy. Nor fear to yield your maiden troth again, for he is very noble and will hold you precious, else I had not left you, Gladys. And he will make you happier far than I, as he is happier natured. Trust in him, and his glad spirit like a golden bell will answer to the lightest touch of thine, filling your home with melody. And now no less I bless you than I write this day against my name the tender title, Brother. But Gladys, in whose gentle bosom glowed the light of purest purpose, felt her soul recoil before this prospect of delight built on another's woe. What! Go my ways girded with happiness and gay with hope, while he whose hand hath clung to mine in troth walks in the shadow cast by my delight, an exile from his home? No, no, oh no! If hearts are weak, souls should at least be strong. I cannot as true woman do this thing. And though with added thought and certain proof that he had gone to come again no more, rose many shy sweet pictures of the bliss which might be hers would she but turn to meet the passion glowing in young Isham's eyes, she gave it as her final verdict out, that while his brother lived she ne'er should give her hand unto another, troth at least, if not her heart, being her own to grant or to withhold as faith and duty prompted. Nor though she was of gentlest mind and heart could she be moved from this by any plea wisdom or love could urge, but firm and true kept to her faith, though day by day her cheek paled, and the glance so proudly radiant once grew all so dim, that those who held her dear shrank as they looked upon her wan young face, crying within their hearts, "The child will die." And they were right. Had there not come a change, fair Gladys would have died. 'Twas not that love had built so firm a seat within her spirit, that disappointment threatened all with ruin, but that the seeds of wild remorse were there, a grievous sense of wrong to those two hearts so firm and generous in their deep devotion. But even as life seemed bending 'neath its load, there came to Benton tidings of the wreck, with loss of all on board of the good ship in which Paul Isham voyaged to the East. And keen as was the pang of grief his death brought to her faithful soul, the strain that bore so hard upon her tender soul was eased. And like a flower that shakes the first light snow from its transparent leaves, she thrilled anew to life and to a beauty more replete, for the faint hint of sorrow in its joy. But though young Ralph came wooing with the spring, fair Gladys would not listen till the year of widowhood and mourning was fulfilled. "For I was his betrothed," she whispered low, "and being such should feel my shame complete, if I should wind a wreath around my brow, ere a year's stars could circle o'er his grave." But when the early fall had surely brought all spring hopes to fulfilment, these were wed, and in the glow of their perfected love, found happiness at last and full content beyond their fondest dreaming. Yet withal there was a wave of sorrow in the joy of Gladys's breast at least, a gentle wave that yet made saddest music, when it throbbed across the hush of midnight or the swell of careless mirth in which she took no part. For now it was she 'gan to dream strange dreams Of him whom they deemed perished, but whom she saw ever moving free amongst his kind, a living, breathing man. So plain indeed she saw this noble figure come and go Amid the lighter fancies of her sleep, she scarce could tell or that were life or this, First waking with the sun upon her cheek and he no longer near. And still so oft this single dream returned, she seemed to live a double life beneath the skies, And give one half to him she loved and one to him who loving her had perished for her sake. Yet not as though she met him face to face, she saw him, dreaming, but as one who moved before her in a life which was not hers, and yet was life with earnest hopes and cares and duties manifold. And now as one who bends above the couches of the sick, she saw him from afar, a steady light among a whirl of shadows. Now as one who striveth with a heaving, threatening crowd that beat about him restlessly and wild, while he stands firm a tower of stately strength amid a sea of waves, and now again alone and musing o'er an empty hearth, with just a tress of gold within his hand. She knows, ah, who so well? But whether thus or whether moving in the hurrying crowd Of street or church or mart, forever calm, forever with that smile upon his lips which spake of sorrow past and peace regained. So deep this smile, so deep the faithful gaze That sometimes turned upon her from afar, Demanding naught but blessing, that she woke Oft times in tears, to find her arms stretched out Across her husband to the silent stars, And waking, shudders that a dream should be More vital true than life. And though at first she fain had told her husband all her heart, And all her grief and yearning, yet as time rolled slowly by and brought her no relief, She learned to hush her secret in her breast, And ponder it in silence when the stars Clomb slowly past the turrets of the house, And lingered in the swaying trees beneath, Like troops of steady watchers. Thus the years passed slowly by, but not until there lay A second blooming infant on her knee Did she dare whisper to her soul and say, Her friend Paul Isham lived. But even then she spake not, seeing men so rarely Trust to women's intuitions, but would sit Oft times and muse, her chin within her palm Like one who looks on visions from afar No other eye can see. And now there came a certain day when Gladys felt her doubts Grow to a sure belief within her breast, No afterthought might shake. She had been sitting beside an open casement Where the vines slowly creeping from below But half concealed the rounded beauty Of her cradling arms and tender mother smile. Across the hush of the calm twilight she could hear the voice of little Paul, As o'er the lawn beneath he fluttered half in view, When suddenly there came a silence so assured And deep, she felt as though a sudden gate Had oped deep in her soul, through which a bursting light Swift pouring, checked the breath upon her lips In sacred wonder. Rising swiftly up, she laid the sleeping infant from her arms, And stood in all her loveliness revealed, The light of feeling shimmering on her face, Like summer starlight on a trembling wave. And lo, as thus she stood, there came a sound, A whispered sigh, a sudden stifled moan, That even as she listened passed away. But when a little later she beheld A muffled form emerge from out the trees And vanish in the shadows of the lawn, She felt a sudden fever smite her soul, And bounding forward let one single cry Leap towards it through the vines, then tottering Sank all helpless with her hands across the sill, But with her face still turned the way he went, As if her look alone might serve in power To bring him back again. And thus it was her young son found her when he came in haste to tell her of a stranger he had met But now among the trees. So bowed, he cried, I scarce could see his face, and yet so strong He took me in his arms and kissed me, mother, As I have seen you kiss the little cross That was the gift of my dear Uncle Paul. And she who listened bent her head once more, And through the sacred tremor of her tears Cried softly, "Yes, my son, strong, strong indeed, The earth holds no such other." Then in haste uprising caused an instant hurried search For one, a stranger, passed but now from view Across the twilight grounds. But though they sought From early evening till the stars were bright, They found him not, and when the morrow came 'Twas told her how the stranger seen last eve Had passed away at midnight from the town To come again no more. In pondering this, she felt the shadows lift from off the past, and show her, as in some strange magic glass, the story of the years, and how his heart had loved her so, he rather chose the ways of lonely exile than to cry as false the dire report which, like an open gate, had wooed her feet into the paths of joy. She bowed her head and vowed with God's high aid to make her life a blessing and a prayer, that in the pure and freer world to come she might stand unrebuked by conscious wrong, betwixt the noble twain whose love had been the grief and solace of her earthly years, and looking up in either shining face, see benediction there. And though from this her dreams forsook her to return no more, there used to steal at times across her ear a sound, a whisper like a wave that broke far on a lonely shore. Grieve not for me, for I am blessed only in your joy, so for my sake be happy. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Rosa Dying by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Then this is death. How strange, how strange! Another hour, another breath Of joyous life, of love, and all is o'er. The scarcely opened blossom perished in its flower. And I so young! Ah, when I first awoke to hear the music rung From what had once been only held so dear, Because in outward show it glimmered bright and clear, As children prize the shell whose pearl is breathed o'er With vermeil dyes, yet feel their joy grow deeper than before, When taught by loving care the secret of its roar. It seemed to me the longest life was all too fleet, An ecstasy for one to hear the mighty ages beat Their hidden meanings out in harmony complete. And now I die, and all the hopes which girlhood hath Go softly by, standing upon the silent shores of death Like little boats blown home by twilight's purple breath. Nay, rather, heart, like little boats that at the dawn in joy depart, And on towards the open sea are borne, Where rounds to perfect noon a vague imperfect morn. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
One Month by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Iswa in Belgium in April 2015. A little month ago, and in my ear I heard your low "I love" strike warm and clear, and musing, wondered why with that pure word, held to my bosom like a fluttering bird, I yet could pace the budding earth and find no gladder angel singing in the wind. To-night, with ear turned vainly to the breeze, which brings no sound save that of moaning trees, with lips unwarmed by thy pure kiss, and hands held out unclasped across the severing lands, I sit and muse. And musing seem to hear a seraph's voice in every querying sphere. A month ago, and love and May in vain looked in my face and sang their sweetest strain, this chill June eve, with none to smile and say, "Sweet, how I love thee," bears the palm away. Why is this? Can summer cheat us so of heart and soul? Ah, dear, dost thou not know? May's laughing eyes beheld thy love for me, but June looks down upon my love for thee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
At the Piano by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. At the Piano. Play on, as softly glides the low refrain. I seem to float on golden tides, by sunlit isles where life and dream are one. are one, and hope and bliss move hand in hand, and thrilling kiss 'neath bowery blooms in twilight glooms, and love is life, and life is love. Play on, as higher rise the lifted strains. I seem to mount through roseate skies, through drifted clouds and golden gleam, to realms of thought and fire, where angels walk and souls aspire. And sorrow comes but as the night that brings a star for our delight. Play on, the spirit fails, the star grows dim, the glory pales. The depth arouse, the depth, and oh, the heart that wakes, the hopes that glow. The depths are roused, their billows call the soul from heights to slip and fall. To slip and fall and faint and be made part of their immensity. To slip from heaven, to fall and find in love the only perfect mind. To slip and fall and faint and be lost, drowned within this melody, as life is lost and thought in thee. Ah, sweet art thou, the star that draws my soul afar, afar. Thy voice, the silvery tide on which I float to islands rare and rich. Thy love, the ocean, deep and strong, in which my hopes and being long to sink and faint and fail away. I cannot know, I cannot say, but play on. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. In Farewell by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. In Farewell. I met thee, dear, and loved thee, yet we part, thou on thine unknown way, and I on mine, ere yet the music of my woman's heart has had full time to harmonize with thine. Yet, since the strain begun has seemed so sweet, forgive me if I dare to proffer thee this echo from the depth where all complete trembles the soul perfected melody. Jewels I have not, else for memory would I bestow them on the friend I love. But tears and smiles and the sweet thoughts that move the heart by day and night, such to thee I give in these poor lines as lavishly as summer winds yield fragrance when they blow up from a vale where countless roses grow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Tragedy of Sedan by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Reka Balog. I had seen him in battle, and he was a man to watch in a conflict, had seen him when death struck down at his feet the one comrade he loved, but never before, upon field or in camp, had beheld on his face such a look of the grave as he brought yesternight to the door of my tent when the evening gun sounded. So ghastly it was, so dread in suggestion of anguish, I leapt in dismay to my feet. Was he ill? Was he hurt? But his eyes staring on without sight made me pause. 'Twas not death, but despair. And I hastily cried, "The man has lost hope, is in grief." But at that he was straight at my side with a bound. "I in grief? And you talk of it, you talk of grief? But this easy. We all talk of grief. I have heard of a man who looked at a scaffold above him and said, laughing too as he spake, if by chance it should fall, 'twould crush me no doubt. When a moment from that it did fall, he shrieked. Ah, yes, he went on. Was it strange? Just as I could shriek now who behold, but enough. I must tell you the whole from the first, or go mad before morning. And his eyes glared wildly on mine through his thick fallen hair. Have you loved? Yes. He went on more shrill in the pause of the death-dealing guns, one may ask. May he not? Such a question as that of a man. For reply, I drew from my bosom a curl that I kissed, and put back on my heart without word. 'Twas enough. He bent down at my side with a cry, Is she fair? Had she eyes like a dove and a step like a deer, so gentle and wild? Do you love her? O heaven! With the force of your body, your spirit and heart, with the flame and the star in your soul? Ah, he gasped. It is folly to ask. A woman must die or turn false to be loved so. Pray God. And he paused. With a sudden quick clench of his hand, you may die ere you come to a passion like that. Looking down, he took from his finger a ring which he wore, gazed on it a moment in anguish, then said, She was pledged to me, friend, was my hope from a child, was my life, you might say. In the mesh of her glance, all my being was thralled. Not a dawn rose upon me, but I woke with the thought of her beauty. The sun was not more to mine eyes than her smile. Ah, I know, such a love is not good. That is passion undoes what its purity makes. But a man cannot choose his fate from the heavens, and this love, as it was my fate. Well, her heart gave response to my suit, and we had been wedded 2 long years ago. But love is ambitious. To give her home, I left her, and far from her glance and her smile, worked my way up to fortune. Oh, oh, the long month. But they passed, and at length, like a dawn on the night, came the day of return. Ah, that day! Like a flame it flares ever before me. Her looks and her smiles will not flit, will not fly. As we walked up the street, the bells break out ringing. For 3 months of doom I have heard them. They never have ceased in my ears. Day and night, night and day. But strange as it seems, at the moment they rang, I was deaf. 'Twas her voice, whose music I listened to then. In her hand she bore a white lily, and when at the fount the children came down from the village to crown her locks with wild posies plucked up from the woods, I scarcely do think I had heard yonder guns had they split at my side. Do you marvel then, friend, I was deaf to his voice, though he stood at her sleeve like a brother. But no dwelling on that. This enough, I was happy that day, that its glory was like the flashing of sunset across the wild waste of billowy sea ere the night fell. You wonder what now? You, sitting at ease in your tent, with the tress of a tender, true woman-like balm on your breast, wonder what could have turned all this rapture to woe in a moment. God, 'twas not much, just a rent in the woof of my fair nuptial garment, not much, only this. 'Twas my wedding eve, friend. She had smiled on me too, but an instant before. My beloved was gone. Yes, yes, he shrieked out, gone as certain as joy, gone, 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 gone. Not a word of farewell, not a look, just that smile that was love or like love, and then his great gulf. Oh, may the world grow old and shrink up in the hands of the Lord ere another night creep by like that. Not till morn did they tell me the whole, how for weeks he had been in the town at her side, stealing up in the dusk to drop a stray rose in her hand, how for weeks she had dropped her sweet head and said never a word. When the neighbors would ply her with questions, I say, it was not until morning they told me all this. Meantime, she was gone. Well, I lived to seek him. Do you know what that means? By the chances of war you have been in your time the hunted spandeer. Have you ever been the hound? Can you reckon of days when, with fire in your blood and revolt in your brain, you wandered the world with your eyes on the face of each man that you met? And the nights without sleep, and the dreams, the visions that swam in the air and made hot the breath of the north wind, the doubts and the hopes, the terror and longing, and all through the whole the feel of the deadly cold still on the breast. And the women, the horrid, sick dread in the blood of their smiles, of their voices, the touch of their hands, the thrill of their garments against you, and then the frenzy of fear lest the next that you met should be she, the taste in the air, on the tongue, of blood and of poison. And the shame, is it written on the heavens or not? Is it spelled on the pavement before you or scrawled on the walls? It is there, it is here, on the forehead, the hands, in the blood, in the nostrils. And I loved her, great heaven, and did yet. This was anguish, you say. You think so? For 3 months I lived in it, friend, and then came despair. I had missed him, 'twas done. Let me be done too. From the German frontier rose a clamor for soldiers. I heard and grew calm. It is well, I exclaimed, men are shot in the field. Let the enemy slay me. So I came to war. He paused here a moment and drew from his breast a crumpled white paper streaked over with blood and laid it before me. You say this was anguish, he cried. But I say it was nothing, just nothing. My friend, can you think what it were or might be if the woman you love, nay, hear me out, should be playing above the horrid steep side of a gulf, and you saw her footsteps draw nearer and nearer, and yet were too far to shriek warning. And at last, as you looked, beheld her slip over, those eyes that you love, the forehead, the hair, saw her struggle and catch at some dizzy small branch that would hold but a breath. And you yet afar, can you think what it were to hear her shriek out with assurance you'd heed? And would come, and that instant while heaven and earth were one glare, and you rushed to be caught, man, be caught in a network of hell which you could not escape. While she your heart's own, oh death, yet is death. My soul torment looked there, and his shaking hand smoothed the white paper before me. Did you think she was false? She was true, friend, was true, true as light, true as heaven, I have known in 3 hours. Was not false, was not base. Oh, my darling, my darling. Beguiled, do you see, wooded away from my side with some smooth, hurried tale, till the length of the garden lay twixt us. Is there vengeance in hell for such villains? The rest? You can guess how it happened, his sudden appeal, the carriage, the horses, her cry which we heard not, the rapid strong whirl of her head on his breast, then the rush and the night. Do you doubt it is true? It is all written here. See the tremulous lines, how they cross and recross. But she's true, this enough, for whole month and yet true. She was sworn it, and now do you see all my anguish? With hand and with voice I strove in my pity to calm him, but he, staggering backward, went on. This not all, she is held in his power by his spies. He would wed her, great heaven, make her countess or something, just stab her, I say. And she calls me, entreats me by all I adore, to come quick, for she slips to destruction. Ha, ha! And his awful laugh whirled on the night wind, come quick, and I'm bound. How it came to this spot, when I know not. It was put in my hands as I strode from the field. By some one who cried, I could hasten, perhaps you have time still to save her. Away to the chief I hurried, a madman. What was France to me now, or the world? I fell down at his feet in despair, told him all, showed my billet in vain, all in vain, and tomorrow's the day of the battle. As in that he had touched the whole depth of his woe, he flung up his arms to the sky for a moment, and then sank down like one shot. When I rose from his side, the dreamt morn of battle flamed high in the east. Do you ask me for more? Leave the end of that cloth, and behold, it is calm now, you see, sirs, quite calm. 'Twas not so yestereve. As he fell, all the din of the battle served not to overwhelm from my ears the shriek that he gave. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Ode to France by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. Ode to France, January 1871. O land of mirth and dance, fair pleasure-seeking France, France of the laughing lip and careless eye, where is the lamp to light thy footsteps through the night, now day has fled and darkness fills the sky? What crown of hope remaineth now? The noontide flowers are dead upon thy chilling brow. What strength hast thou to meet, with unshod hurrying feet, the rocky steeps and rugged paths of war? Now that the fields are past, the heavens overcast, and north winds blow upon thee from afar, what songs are left for thee to sing, now that the timbrels hushed and clarion trumpets ring? Curse not the bitter hour, after the full-blown flower cometh the fruit, as sowing ye shall reap. When bearded corn shall shoot up from the bramble's root, and strength arise unshorn from sensual sleep, then from the head of less than Jove shall great Minerva spring and in full armour move. Had ye no ears to hear the mighty warning clear, watch, for ye know not when the hour may come? Had ye no eyes to see the small cloud's prophecy writ on the face of heaven's cerulean dome? Was there no threatening shade forecast along thy sunny path from all the frowning past? Didst think that God could brook upon thy sports to look forevermore, nor stir upon his throne, that through the measured beat of ceaseless dancing feet no sounds arose in woeful undertone, that slighted Sabbaths had no tongue to plead within his ears, accusing crimes among? The justice which on high weighs all with nicety has weighed thy deeds, O trifling land of France, in every canon's word. His awful voice is heard, by day and night his echoing steps advance. Then fling thy gilded baubles down, who meekly bears the cross shall wear the conquering crown. Despair is not for thee. What though thou bendest knee, whose crown once blazed in zenith pride on high, so from thy present shame arise a nobler fame, as purest light athwart the deepest sky, and from thy bended neck outspring the strong and glowing plumes of wisdom's soaring wing. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. On the Threshold by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. On the Threshold. Darling, why this dainty glow shifting on your cheeks of snow? Why this look of summer skies shining in your lifted eyes? What new words are in the breeze? What new whispers in the trees? What soft language gently drips from the rose's crimson lips? That you wear so fresh a joy in your smiles and glances coy, that in every gesture fine such a wonderment should shine? Hath the spirit of all beauty kissed you in the path of duty? Or that angel of the wood, holy-hearted Solitude? Have you listened to the singing of the meadow grasses springing? Heard the shadows whispering tell how they woo the asphodel? Or has something yet more sweet, stranger yet and more complete, met you in the hidden ways trod by these fair autumn days? Something lovely as the bright flushing of the morning light? Something mystic as the free, mighty, music-haunted sea? Ah, my darling, ruby flush over the snow cheek need not rush. One can read the whole sweet story in your brow's transparent glory. Scents of violets crushed and sweet hold about your pensive feet. Golden glimmers gild your hair, and you need not whisper where. You have wandered since I pressed you in farewell to my breast, need not whisper that the snare caught your wild wings unaware. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Isabel Maynor by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Rika Balog. I sat with Philip 'neath his own roof tree, watching his children sporting on the lea, and half in pleasure at the scene so bright, and half in envy of their young delight, uttered a sigh which all unconscious, he, my well-loved friend, repeated after me, but in so doing hesitated not to turn and ask what genius of the spot had filled my soul so full of bliss or woe. A single breath could make it overflow. A man, I said, possessed of every good which earth can lavish in her happiest mood. A loving wife, a home where pen might dwell, forgetful of his flower-bespangled dell, can ask a houseless wanderer like me in face of all this happiness I see. What grief or joy can fill my spirit so, a single breath can make it overflow. A houseless wanderer has but to wed, to taste himself these wanted sweets, he said. Fair women, friend, are not so scarce, I wot, that one like you need mourn a lonely lot. Fair women, Philip, I returned, bestrow the world with smiles whichever way we go. But for me one fairest woman's face hath made me blind to every other's grace. Ah, then you love, he whispered, and a great dull shadow fell upon his manner grey. But hold! And fighting up the casement wide, he sat again with forehead turned aside, As we are friends, you shall the whole recall from the first smile to the blank end of all. I am in mood to hear somewhat of grief, perhaps to set mine own joy in relief. Bitter he smiled, but sick of heart and worn by a hard burden long in sorrow borne. I only paused to cast one other glance on those fair children in their mystic dance. Then, while their sweet tones trembled on the air and mingled with my story unaware, I told this tale of simple love and loss, my daily memory and secret cross. "Philip," I said, "far hence among the hills, where waves the birch and spring the mountain rills, there stands a cottage whose four walls enclose the sweetest maiden that this hard world knows. Humble her home, but the lowliest spot may serve to hide the sweet forget-me-not. The simplest glen that darkens in the woods hold the shine moonbeam in its solitudes. And Isabel Maynor, though of humble birth, is fair to see as any flower of earth, ethereally pure and full as bright as softest moonbeam of the summer's night. It was by chance I found her. Sweetest things come often thus as from the welkin springs. The evening star when we but look to see the stretch and shine of blue immensity. I had been wandering 'neath a summer sun all day among the mountains with my gun, when, stooping wearily above a stream, I saw a shadow quivering in its gleam, and glancing up, beheld her standing there against my side, with softly bashful air, offering a cup, and saying, "I confess," words which I heard not for her loveliness. I took the cup, and like the ocean shell which charmed first by beauty is visible, she charmed that day with lovely looks serene, the tender harmony of face and mien. But afterwards the music in the shell, the sweetness of the soul made audible, grew on me, and I vowed within my mind that she alone, of all fair womankind, should be mine own, and by the name of wife walk with me through the chance and change of life. But as the summer days and evenings passed, swift as wind with music on the blast, I found her brightest fancies were but flowers, wreathed over the weariness of waiting hours. She loved. I know not how the knowledge came unto me first, in coldness or in flame, in gentle converse or abstracted look, beside the stream or over some poet's book. Enough that time certain knowledge brought, she held a secret in her inmost thought, a secret which in shyly hiding she revealed to all around unconsciously. As timid violets lay the ambient air, with their heart's richest fragrance unaware, the fragrance whispers that the flower is there. But as the weeks fled by us, and there came no one across my pathway to reclaim the hand I took at morn and evening light with joyful greeting or to sad good night, I began to think her love was but a dream, a star to fade in morning's fervent beam, and mine alone the worship worth the while of the deep glance and shy ecstatic smile. And thinking thus began to hope and blend the reverent lover with the earnest friend. But With the first hint of my desire, she flashed one moment with indignant fire, then, slowly paling, told me that her fate was hers no more to grant this side of death, and all unconscious of the light which lay upon her beauty in a vermeil ray, lifted her head and smiled as if her eyes beheld afar the hills of paradise. But I scarce waiting till the soft delight, he flashed and faded from the forehead bright, bent to her ear and whispered, "It is well, but where is he who holds it, Isabel? The summer comes, the tender summer goes, the woods of autumn blossom like the rose, winter descends, but he whose blessed right it is to make your every season bright. He only lingers, then as to a friend tell me in what far country he can wend, who holds in trust a heart so dear as this, and yet can wander from his rightful bliss." She did not answer, but her very frame seemed breathing forth a bright ethereal flame. I felt the sudden splendor of her gaze surround and hold me like a summer's haze, yet could not quite forbear to say again, "I would not doubt but men are ever men, and much I fear he may not love so well as this pure trust deserved Isabel." "His love to mine," she answered through a blush as tremulous as rose upon its bush, "is as the moon unto a timid star, he shines while mine but quivers from afar. His love, it is as boundless as the sky, and tender as the teardrop in the eye, as earnest as the sunlight upon earth, as warm as leaping fire on the hearth." "And yet," I said. "And yet," she answered slow, "you see no evidence of this, I know. But for me it lies within my heart, it is enough for me to feel the start of mine own blood, to know that he is true, though all the world should fail that he is true, and will come yet to take unto his side the humble mountain maiden for his bride, that sooner than had doubted him had died. 'Twas fate like that of saints of the dear Lord. I felt my vain hopes perish at the word, and bending o'er the sacred head I took her hand in mine with my last lover look. "Bella," I said, "one word, but tell his name, and I will trench no more upon his claim." And looking in my face she told it me, as one deals coin from golden treasury, but telling, flushed as if her tongue had given the mortal ears what but belonged to heaven. But I, with reverence in my eye and soul, bent over her hand in lately learned control, and praying God to bless her with his grace, went forth to hide the sorrow in my face. Went forth to whisper to the brook and sky the anguish of a love that could not die, but which constrained me from that self-same day to seek in city street or mountain way the honor of the name I heard her say. But though for 5 long years I wandered wide, through many a town by many a fair hillside, I have not found him, and my very heart forgets not yet the moment's bitter smart, forgets not yet that form of tender grace, the wildflower loveliness of Bella's face, nor can forget till over life's fading hills descends the night that ends all human ills. Softly I ceased, But he, who sat beside, rose to his feet and bending o'er me cried. The name, what was it? And half wonderingly I answered. It was Philip, Philip Lee. And mine, and yours? I stammered under breath. Is Philip Morton? Philip Lee, he said. Lee Morton, friend. Ah, you did not know, nor she, poor child who loved and trusted so. A man could wear half names beside the hearth. Of her he held the dearest upon earth. Then, while I sat confused, overcome, dismayed, he bowed his head upon his hands and said, I meant not to deceive her. By my life I loved her, would have made the child my wife. But time and fashion, and the social use of moneyed men, the world and its abuse, came in between us, and you see the end. For me remorse, for her thy sorrows, friend. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Myrna by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Iswa, in Belgium, in April 2015. When first I saw him, I but saw the shadow of his brow, but seeing that, forgot all else of happiness or woe. I had been plucking early bloom from where the brooklets run, and stood just at the forest's verge, twixt shadow and the sun. I am not fair like Maud or Jane, nor gay like Clementine. The glory lingering in their locks forgets to brighten mine. My footsteps pause amid the flowers they trample in their mirth. For me a crown of mystic stars lies on the breast of earth. Yet, as his eyes fell on my face, I saw his glance grow deep, as his who looks upon a lake where moonbeams lie asleep. And though his smile half passed away, 'twas like the fading light of stars that only fade because the dawn lifts on the night. A maiden lovely as the first arbustus bloom of May was with him when I next beheld him pass along that way. The boughs were waving o'er their heads, the sunbeams at their feet lay like half-woven coronals of blossoms rare and sweet. Yet when he came unto the spot where I had stood that day, I saw him pause and cast one glance of wistfulness that way. And seeing, I upraised my voice from out the woodland's heart, and sang like one to whom the heavens some vision fair impart. I sang of stars, and straight the sky seemed to grow still and dark, and myriad burning jets of flame shoot from it spark by spark. I sang of bulbuls and the east, and through the woods there pressed 1,000 spicy scents that blew about my brow and breast. And then, like leaping flame my passionate soul upsprang. I loosed my spirit on the world, and love, sweet love, I sang. The birds were cooing in the trees, they grew as still as death. The breeze that drinks the souls of flowers paused on its perfumed breath. And still I sang, like doom I sang. My soul arose in air, I dropped the music from the clouds, I felt my face grow fair. And when I ceased I saw afar, toward the setting sun, his head sink slowly on his breast, like one whose race is run. And though the mellow twilight soon, like purple-breasted dove, passed flying towards the blazoned west, and all was dark above, I did not stir, but sat like one from whom the world has sped, my eyes upon the way he went, the shadows on my head. Alas, the days are long since then, and many an eve gone by, but still, in dreams, I sit and watch that barren heath and sky. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Coming Home from the Fair by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. Coming Home from the Fair. She thinks she is pretty. Look there, how she smiles in his face through her hair, with a gleam in her eye like the star drop you see in a blossom half ope to the bee. She thinks she is pretty, her cheeks have a dimple so sweet when she speaks, and she wonders perchance as she leans on his arm if I know or can guess all her charm. She thinks that he loves her, perhap, that the fairing he threw in her lap had a story to tell if she chose for her part to remember a moment her heart. She thinks that he loves her, ah yes, and laughs in the gay consciousness, with a throb of delight that the brown eyes should bear such a treasure as this from the fair. But ah, if she knew what he whispered but now to the blue, with a thrill in his voice and a look that was worth all she gets from his youth and his mirth. How the eyes that look down are the sweetest, as those flowers are the rarest, completest, which the hand must uplift ere the gazer can see all the treasures they hide from the bee. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Confession of the Musketeer by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Kay Hand. Confess. I will confess. But first, as thou dost love thine holy office, rise and look from yonder grating opening on the bay, and tell me, for my chains drag heavily, if far away where sky and billow meet, you see a scarlet pennon floating free. Yes? Then draw near, and I will tell you all, as if within a true confessional, contented thus to speak the truth and die. She was a dream to me, a gentle zephyr stealing across the fever of my life, sweet with all-soothing fragrance, halting not, but leaving in my ears, in fluttering, the wild, sweet music of the birds and brooks, within my breast, the freshness of the summer. I loved her, if men call it love to give their soul in worship to a star of heaven. But whatsoe'er you think, and holy men will have their thoughts, for all my love and worship, I was not wont to gaze upon her much, not much, though every lineament of hers was precious unto me as mine own soul. She was my lord king's daughter, heir to crowns and wearer of the purple from her birth, while I was a simple musketeer, a sword to be drawn freely in her cause, but not to be wide brandished in her sight unless the hour demanded. Wherefore then these chains, the gallows lifted in the court, and all yon preparation for stern death? Was I not found before her on my knees within the sacred precincts of her room? I was. But ere I lift the veil too high, look out once more, and by the Christ you worship, tell me if yonder pennon which you see holds on its course unstayed across the bay. Yes? It is well. Then listen. For a year I held my station close against her door, and heard her steps go by me morn and night, and never raised an eyelid. But one day, just as she turned to glide adown the hall, an impulse seized me like a stormy wind, to gaze upon the beauty which had been my dream from early youth. But when, with just one up-quick gathering of my soul like that with which a man dares flood or braves the fire, I raised mine eyes and looked upon her face, I did not see its beauty, did not feel its bright consummate charm of glance and smile. Not then, not then. For fainter than the shade which falls from heaven's fleeciest summer cloud upon a swaying oleander bud, and melts away again even while you wonder if 'tis a shadow or the blossom's richness, a mist lay o'er its lustre, and mine eyes saw but that mist, no more. And though ere long she flitted from my side all gaiety, I could not sleep my natural sleep that night, for thinking of the veil of grief or care which lay so faintly on her loveliness. But when, as week joined week, I heard her step drag slowlier and slowlier down the hall, and the delicious murmur of her laugh fall faintlier and faintlier on the ear, my heart turned cold within me. Was it death? Or marking how the gallants of the court crowded like moths of summer at her coming, that evil worse than death, a hopeless love? Laying a hand of ice upon my heart, I bent myself to watch. But although earth had lent her noblest, loftiest, and best to make our court the stateliest in the world, and gallants were as plenty as the pearls upon the royal diadem, she passed among them all as smiling and serene as the high moon amid the clouds of even. It is not love, I said, it must be death. But on the morrow as I stood and watched with heavy gaze the selfsame crowd go by, a quick form brushed me and a blossom fell as from a restless hand against my foot. And looking up I saw the Count de Ferra turn for an instant from the crowd and fix his eyes in wild entreaty upon mine. Next moment, stealing on me like a ray of faintest moonlight through a prisoner's gloom, I spied my royal princess. I could hear her breath come, go, painting alternately glad rose and fearful lily on her cheek. And scarcely knowing what it was I did, I stooped and raised the blossom from the ground, and kneeling dropped it in her open palm. She took it. For a moment earth and heaven swam in one whirl about me. Then a calm fell on my spirit, and I slowly rose, knowing as if an angel had proclaimed it, that soon or late, on that day or another, my life would follow in the blossom's wake. Then it was that each morning at the dawn I looked upon the sun in its first splendor, as one who questions, "What hast thou for me?" And every evening as that splendor paled, and ghastly as a spirit from the grave, the wild moon rose upon me. "What hast thou?" Preparing thus my soul against the day, when he should fling the flower of my life beneath her feet, and she should lean to take it. At last it came. I had been at my post since heavy noon, and I was wondering why the princess so delayed to venture forth, when suddenly from where the fountains play down in the court, there broke upon my ears a short, sharp cry. "Stand by there for your lives, and let no one pass by on pain of death." It was the king's voice, but before mine eyes could turn within their sockets, the closed door which guarded the young princess from the world, swung on its noiseless hinges, and her face, awful in high devotion and despair, looked out and brightened on me like a star, then grew as fixed as death. "I want," she said, and low as were the words they filled mine ears and fell upon my breast like dropping ice, "the help of one who for my sake will brave the shame and terror of a bitter death." I did not tremble. Earth's most awful joys make men quite calm. Giving her look for look, but stopping not for any mock of words, I followed and stepped in and shut the door and heard it clang behind me. Then, oh then, the usage of my thoughts passed quite away, and what she was, and what I was, I lost in the great splendor which her beauty made through all the room. I had no need to turn my head to know whose form it was that stood behind me. In her eyes his image burned, and down through every fibre of her frame the fervor and the purpose of a love that dares all things, fears not, and devotes all, flashed like a flame. "Madame," I cried, "your will! Let me but know your will! First, hear my need." And looking up she cried below her breath, "I love the Count de Ferra. He is here. We were to have been wedded ere this eve, but some one has betrayed us. At the door the king stands. In the court beneath us there await 3 soldiers ready with drawn swords to smite whoever leaps from out the casement. Protect him! But first slay me where I stand, that he, my father, seeing me lie low, may stop to mourn and give him chance to fly." And flinging all her beauty to the ground, she knelt, my princess, knelt before my feet. But I, scarce waiting for the smile she strove to give me for a guerdon, For the sound of his quick passionate voice in wild disclaim Asked if men knew her lover. And she said, "None on God's earth save we." Whereat, at once a great light spread itself within my soul, and bidding her to thrust him out of sight, I raised mine eyes and looked upon her face for the last time on earth. "Madame," I said, "I love you. I have loved you all my life. A musketeer has loved you all his life. 'Tis meet for such offense that he should die, but you, remember you this thing and live, that on the morrow at the hour of noon, from out the port below us in the bay, there sails a bark unto the shores of Greece, guided by men I know. Now if so be that all goes well, and you and he with faith fast wedded by some holy man of God, have gained a refuge in the little craft, uplift a scarlet pennon at the bow, and let it float till out of sight of land. Remember." Waiting not to see the look of startled wonder ebb from out her eyes, I knelt and took her robe within my hands and kissed it, just as through the opening door the king leaped in upon us. How he sprang like flame upon my throat, and how she swooned protesting wildly in my innocence, it boots not now to tell. Even though I was deemed by him her lover, and immured within these dungeon walls, before her eyes had oped again unto the light of day, but he was saved. And now I ask no more, but that yon scarlet pennant on the sea Sink from the wide horizon and be lost, the hour I give my parting breath to heaven. His wish was granted. As the prison guns, proclaiming to all the world the deed was done, that little flag that for so long a time had fluttered on the bosom of the bay, trembled from sight across the fair horizon. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
What Do the Roses Say in Their Dreams? By Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Iswa, in Belgium, in April 2015. What do the roses say in their dreams? Let us hark and hear, let us hark and hear. Do they echo the songs of the eager streams, running so near, running so clear? Or have they a murmur of love and fear for the bliss of the wandering breeze's ear? Do they murmur of skies and the longing stars? Let us hark and hear, let us hark and hear. Are their rich hearts full of the glory of Mars, with his blood-red shield and his golden spear? Or doth the thought of some softer sphere well up from their depths in a tremulous tear? I would know, how they tremble and burn. Hark then and hear, hark, love, and hear. By the stir at their hearts we shall surely learn in an instant now what hope or fear, what rapture or pain, what sorrow or cheer thrills through the breast of each beauty here. Then, love, stoop close. No rosier bud doth nestle here than thy rose ear. Stoop close. Such beauty can never intrude. And now what is it they say, my dear? You blush, sweetheart. Ha! Didst thou fear aught else but thine own name to hear? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Legend of Antwerp by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Newgate Novelist. They led him forth. The morning sun was shining wide o'er field and rill. The glory of a day begun was in the sky, was on the hill, was in the wild bird's early trill. His form was high, his cheek was fair, the star of youth was on his brow. The shadow of his falling hair was turning, in the early glow, to the clear sunshine's rippling flow. They led him forth. They bade him look his very last upon the day, and from his eyes the bandage took one moment, that the morning's ray might bless him ere he passed away. He looked around. He looked above, on purple mount and tender sky, then turned and gazed on human love, in sweet girl faces hurrying by, and bowed his noble head to die. When lo! from out the heaving throng behold a sudden form appear, ethereal as a dreaming song, stealing through fragrant groves to cheer the restless spirit of the ear. A girlish form so mystic bright, the very gods were touched by fear and trembled backward, as the light of her pure glance fell on them, clear as moonlight shimmering on the mere. "He shall not die," she said, and laid her woman's hand upon his breast, her bright smile glowing undismayed from out her locks, as from the west looks forth a young star's joyful crest. And such, the legend runs, her grace, and such the power of her mien, she seemed to fill the market-place with sense of angel forms serene and sound of harps that sang unseen. "He shall not die!" And from the crowd she led him forth, while heavenly awe fell on each wondering heart, and bowed the head of every mortal there, filling the silence like a prayer. She led him forth, and none might say if earth or heaven was in the power of that young maiden's love that day, to still the passions of the hour and baffle vengeance in its flower. We only know they passed unharmed by peasant's cot and noble's hall, and in their youth and beauty armed, sped scatheless through the city's wall and vanished from the sight of all. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sunrise from the Mountains by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Hung thick with jets of burning gold, the sky crowns with its glorious dome the sleeping earth, illuminating hill and vale. O'erhead the nebulous splendor of the Milky Way stretches afar, while crowding up the heavens the planets worship for the throne of God, casting their crowns of gold beneath his feet. It is a scene refulgent, and the very stars tremble above, as though the voice divine reverberated through the dread expanse. But soft, a change, a timid creeping up of gray and east, a loss of stars on the horizon's verge. Gray fades to pearl and spreads up zenithward, the while a wind runs low from hill to hill, as if to stir the birds awake, rouse up the nodding trees, and draw off silence like a garment from the drowsy earth. The heavens are full of points of light that go and come and go and leave a tender ashy sky. The pearl has pushed its way to north and south, save where a line spun 'tween two peaks at east gleams like a cobweb silvered by the sun. It grows, a gilded cable binding hill to hill. It widens to a dazzling belt, half circling the earth, then stretches up on high, a golden cloth laid down for kingly feet. Thus spreads the light upon the heavens above, while earth hails each advancing step, and lifts clear into view her rich empurpled hills, to keep at even beauty with the sky. The neutral tints are deeply saffroned now. In streaks auroral beams of colored light shoot up and play about the long straight clouds, and flood the earth in seas of crimson. Ah, a thrill of light, in serpentine, quick waves, a stooping of the eager clouds, and lo, majestic, lordly, blinding bright, the sun spans the horizon with its rim of fire. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Separated by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Carolyn. Separated. When in the solemn dusk you sit and think, with face upturned to the enduring skies, of life and art, and those great griefs that sink the soul in woe in spite of high emprise, I know not how, but from the surging sea of these thy thoughts some echo comes to me, moving my soul till from its billows rise the answering strain for which thy spirit cries. And then or joy or sorrow holds the throne of thy strong heart, thou art no more alone. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Barricade by Anna Katharine Green. Read for LibriVox.org by Reka Balog. 1 in a million. True, sir, true. Nor is it strange you marvel so to see such eyes look down on you from walls so barren, mean and low. But this my only daughter's face, for all the grace of the rich beauty that you see, and where, then, where a fitter place for her to smile than here on me, who nourished her in infancy? 1 in a million. So was said by many a one that, riding by, beheld her lovely bended head between them and the summer sky. She wore so grand a look, you see, unconsciously, a lily musing in a beam of straight, were as apt as she to turn aside and fondly dream of its own shadow in the stream. She was so true. Ah, when by chance I seem again her form to see, it is not she who died for France. That rises to my memory, but the dear girl who sat of yore within my door, reeling her thread by night and day, content through the breezes bore up from the meadows strewn with hay the sound of merry youth and play. Too bright for such a doom. Ah, sir, her very brightness hid a tear. I scarce could ever look at her without a sigh of love and fear. Such sacred stillness seemed enshrined deep in her mind, the stillness of a soul that knows a trumpet call is one the wind that unto others only blows the careless perfume of the rose. What was her story? Is it not then written in those eyes of hers? Glances so deep and sad, I wot, should be their own interpreters. Yet may there linger unaware beneath that tear the tokens of another smart, as oft in sweetest rhymes you hear, beneath the language of his art, the beatings of the poet's heart. For he who limned those features, sir, had loved her once, poor Jeanne Winnie. He died, they say, in blessing her upon the field of Chaupigny. A generous youth in all was he, and true, but she, absorbed in girlish fancies bright, walked in his smile, serenely free, unknowing that its genial light, perchance it was that he had been her playfellow from earliest youth, and that there was no mystery in his honest glance of love and truth. But this I know, that one fair day in early May he left us to return no more. I saw him as he moved away, pause softly in the open door, and bless the threshold over and over. Next morn he came. Why is it now, remembering all as it befell, I yet can bless the transient glow which led him to our humble well? He was so noble, sir, to see, such majesty was in his mien and bearing bold. My very cup took dignity beneath his glance, which gently told 'twas welcome as a cup of gold. I coughed, and in the moment more had passed forever from my sight. Had not the linnet at the door upraised a song of such delight? He turned, ah, on what simple things our future swings, what wondrous issues hang upon the idle song a linnet sings. He turned, and there, where roses run, saw Clarence standing in the sun. With one meek hand upon her breast, the other clinging to the wine, she stood in her young beauty dressed as in a robe of golden shine. I saw him start. I saw the blush of manhood flush, responsive to that vision bright, and turning, let my whole soul rush in love and fear to hail the sight of her younger innocent delight. But in that uplifted face no answering color met my view. A mortal in her winning grace, she seemed a trance spirit too. I felt the stinging terror dart keen through my heart as I beheld the raptured eye and marked the reckless blood drops start unheeded from her hand, and dyed the thorns she grasped unconsciously. He saw, and gently laid his hand upon the bridle of his steed, that, faithful to his least command, paced slowly onward down the mead. I marked him leaning backward still, as over the hill he passed and vanished in the wood, and turning with a nameless thrill to clasp my darling where she stood, found silence there and solitude. But when at eventide I drew her face to mine with fond good night, no lurking shadow met my view, commingled with its wonted light, rather a shyly added gleam, as through some dream had brushed her by with ardent wing. Some mellow sunset loosed its beam upon a wave, yet fluttering with ecstasy of early spring. Is it that he will come again? I asked and sighed. Or do some souls, like the deep sea shell, catch on strain of the world's music as it roars, entranced in wonder and delight, fold up their bright, warm walks about it evermore? Content to whisper day and night, by land and sea, to echo over of that one instant's joy and power. I dared not think. Meantime the spring, cast by her veil of amber mist, and in full splendor stopped to ring the lilac boats with amethyst. Methinks the world was near, so fair the very air hung poised as if on golden wings, a light like love was everywhere, and yet for me the fear of things unknown made dim earth blossomings. But one clear day in early June, as I sat busy at my wheel, crooning perhaps an old-time tune of lover's woe or over's weal, I felt the shadow and the gloom of that small room yield to a sudden burst of light, and glancing with a sense of doom toward the door, beheld her bright, full figure lifted to its height. Oh, never, never till I die shall I forget the look she wore, as gazing on me silently, she crossed the sunny sanded floor. It was as if the regal crown had settled down upon the artless brow. I knew her very step, her simple gown, transfigured in its lustre, grew in dignity beneath my view. Mother, and at the word her smile passed softly in a roseate bloom, as sings the sun away the while all heaven flowers in its room. There's one without awaits the cheer of welcome here. Speak to him, for I go, she said, and even while I faltered near, drooped lover yet her head, and vanished with reluctant tread. That instant through the swaying vines he proudly stepped. O lover eyes, O lover brows, how brightly shines the sun of hope in youthful skies. My old heart trembled as I gazed, my eyeballs dazed. I seemed, as by some vision stressed, to see that other go dispraised, that yet in going stooped to bless the threshold he no more would press. But strong in might of motherhood, to save my child from loss and woe, I moved and faced him where he stood, with quivering lip, but steady brow. "Fair sir," I said, "in careless hour, a wildwood flower may seem a treasure to the eye, but place it in a lady's bower, and what was radiant 'neath the sky seems only fit to fade and die." "'Tis true," he cried, "but lady's bower and man's earnest heart are twain. Sheltered by love, no stormy shower shall reach thy wilding sweet again." Then while I slowly shook my head, he softly said, "Hast a mother's consistency? I have no mother when I wed. The mother of my wife must be a mother also unto me." I turned away. I could not speak. Like shadows on a moonlit stream, I felt my thoughts confusing break across an underlying gleam. A moment more, and through the flush of vine and bush, I saw him pass unto her side. Then all grew dark, and a great gush of music swam up on the wide, swift breeze that filled the mountainside. Why need I linger? Ere the week had passed in all its cheer away, the April of my darling's cheek had bloomed and budded like the May. She had no need of speech to tell what fairy bell had rung its summons in her soul, the lips which smiled, the lids which fell, the brow's transparent aureole, unwittingly revealed the whole. You see, she was a maiden, sir, that till that time had never known what was to have another steer the current of life's undertone. The falling shadows in the woods' deep solitudes, my mother glance, the sudden flow of waters in the mountain flood had moved her, but such passion, no, 'twas sunlight falling upon snow. My darling loved then, but for such grief follows love as night the day. And all this joy was but the touch of rapture ere it fled away. The last soft glimmer of the blue of heaven through the gathering rush of hurrying cloud, the final welling up of dew upon the blossom ere it bowed before the fierce destroyer proud. But ere the Sunday eve had come, the ringing trump of war had blown across the threshold of our home, and he who held her dear had gone. Gone, gone, and she pure heart was left behind, bereft. Ere love's first week had run its sands, her thread of hope by stern fate cleft, while yet its silver shining strands gleamed bright and beauteous in her hands. My child, but she like one who sees beyond the deep abyss. A country flowering in the sun, all luminous with love and bliss, lost not that look which was my joy, but in the coy delight of memory found the spell the present grief could not destroy. The eyes o'erhung with asphodel saw not the shade that round her fell. But as the days fled by and sounds of warfare mingled with the blast, and nearer to our bounds the frowning shade of battle passed, as death and danger filled the air and many a fair Fond woman's countenance showed trace of wasting grief or anxious care, I marked upon my darling's face another look find gradual place. A new strange look, not terror, no, nor anguish, no, nor fear for him, but something subtler, such a glow as a quick torch swung through the grim that darkens of midnight air might cause to flare upon the placid marble brow of some sweet Mary gleaming fair from wayside shrine upon the woe of a lost wanderer down below. A look that froze me, warned me, and would not leave my dreams at night. A look that deepened as I gazed and filled my soul with vague affright. Alas, I cried, she hears afar the voice of war, she will not linger long away. The sound of battle in her ear is like a call she must obey. But oh, the love, the heart's dismay. And I was right. Another week and we had left our home behind, in Paris' surging streets to seek the work for which her spirit pined. I could not live so far, she said, from where his head may come some weary day to lie, nor breathe my breath and know some bed of pain was comfortless, that I might ease perhaps with smile or sigh. I am at rest now, and she turned her face in glad content on me, through whose pure light her glances burn like holy lamps on holy shrine. The smile I may not give to him need not grow dim, while pain and sorrow plead for aid, the eyes he loved forget to brim with pity, or the heart he made his own grow faint with hopes delayed. And clad with this strong hope she grew at once so beautiful and bright, she seemed like one on whom some new fair world had opened in delight. For me it was enough to see the helpful, free, sweet way of her in all distress, to hear her voice and know that she was happy and the pain was less, and sorrow for that happiness. But what say I? 'Tis not of this our conflict with the foreign foe that I would speak today, it is of her and of our final woe. And she was in no peril then, not even when gaunt famine stalked the city through, and women sickened, yes, and men lay down to die within our view, and want was the breath we drew. It is of that dread after hour when passion opened the door of hell, and glutting fury rose to power, and might was lord, that I would tell. O awful flame of burning homes, of failing domes, against your scarlet tapestry on figure only goes and comes. Whene'er I look one only see how angel-like it smiles on me. But to my story. France had bowed her haughty head unto her fate, and the last Prussian's footstep proud had echoed through our city's gate, and peace was ours at last, if not the happier lot of conquerors in their victory. The last fierce cannon had been shot, and life and love were safe, and he, our hero, priceless treasury. To me no other thought was worth the tribute of passing sigh. I could carol in my myth that day of shame and misery. But it was not so with her, for all the stir of hope upspringing in her breast, a shadow like the dreamy blur that veils the moon lay half confessed upon her beauty's glowing crest. And when I cried, a happy day is this which sees the Prussians gone, so happy, this dear forehead may soon wear, perhaps, its marriage crown, she did not make me quick reply, but dropped her eye and shuddered faintly like a flower that feels the wind go chilling by, though all things else around and o'er hang still, nor own its artful power. A happy day, but her gaze passed quickly to the open door. It is upon life's sunniest days the storm prepares that whelms us over. Oh, what was it that smote my heart? What stinging dart of terror, menace, doubt, or woe was hidden in those words apart, that all my life blood ceased to flow in peace, as she thus murmured low? Moving aside, I raised my eyes to where her glance had sped before, when what was that which hid the skies, just shining through the open door? A face, but ah, how dread, how rude in its wild mood! If it had been a tiger's own, I had not sprung from where I stood, with fiercer cry no quicker thrown my arms round Clarice standing lone. And yet it was a manly face, which some fond mother's lips had kissed, a countenance where thought had placed the thought through of a dogmatist. I did not know him then by name, but through the flame of the fell glance which saw, alas, my daughter's face with passionate claim, I seemed to see as in a glass the spirit of a demon pass. And though in just a moment more he vanished even while I looked, and heaven's pure sky all sunnied over came shining inward in rebuke, I could not choose but feel the gloom of some near doom had fallen about us unaware, a breath, a whisper from the tomb had crossed our summer garden fair, leaving its poison in the air. But hiding in my mother's breast the terror I could not repress, I strove with merry smiles and jest to win her back to happiness. But she, who ever until now had raised her brow, serene amid the darkest hour, drooped slowly from this time, as though she felt a blight upon the flower of her young life and maiden power. But not until that fearful day he came again, and with some word of love and love's resistless sway, strove hard to make his passion hard, not till commanded from her sigh, he turned his bright, fierce gaze on us and bade us know, by the low sounds of restless fight, just waking in the streets below, that will was law in Paris now. Did I foresee that we were lost, if Victor came not soon to aid, that the shy leaf by zephyrs tossed was the whirlwind's grasp betrayed? But Victor could not come, the toils with tightening coils had caught us in their fatal snare, the frantic freedom which despoils, and heeded note was in the air, and cannon's voice mocked every prayer. And as the conflict round us grew intenser in its frenzy dire, he fiercer turned, as though he drew fresh fury from each mounting fire. "Thou art my bride," he used to say, "and share a sway with freedom in this breast of mine. Your fates are one. The selfsame day that sears her fall sees thee and thine laid bruised and bleeding on her shrine. And when the hours in flying brought the deadly struggled to a head, and while despair and passion sought to do the work of hope now dead. It was no raging man that come, red from the flame, to gloat a moment o'er his power, but some mad demon dead to shame, that in his frenzy found an hour to tread and break a wilding flower. My innocent child, but she with calm, high aspect kept him still at bay, and with one name as with a charm stayed up her courage night and day. Meantime about our very door the rush and roar of warfare 'gan to ebb and swell, and barricades arose before our eyes, and nearer, deadlier, fell the hissing shot and bursting shell. And listening to their sullen call, and looking on their angry glare, I could but pray their wrath might fall upon us twain in our despair. But she at that would whisper, "Nay, oh rather pray, that you may live through Clarice die, if but upon some happier day, to tell my victor how that I was true unto life's latest sigh." And leaning on my mother's breast, she raised her earnest face to mine, and murmured, "Death for me is best, you must not grieve at God's design." Then as I shuddered, added slow, "The noonday glow of life had been too bright for me. I was not made to stem the flow of daily care, nor live to see my dreams fade in reality. To live, to love, and then to die, while life and love are pure and sweet as April's mingled smile and sigh, in which all hopeful fancies meet, is not so sad. More sad to me it were to see the falling leaves, the clouding sky, to look around and miss the free, glad singing of the birds, and sigh in vain for hopes and days gone by. A mist just blown from off the hills across the roses of the dawn, that for a moment burns and thrills with splendor, with their glory drawn. It were not meet for me to scale a thing so frail, the lofty facade of the sky, nor made to shimmer and to fail. Bear up my heart as though my way lay through the golden ranks of day. Even the love which God has given to make my summer morn complete is more a thing of happy heaven than happy earth, however sweet. And he will say so, too, at last, when all is past and life resumes its wonted calm. 'Tis not for one like me to cast my lot with such as he. The balm is sweet, but mates not with the palm. Yet does he love me, meek, untaught, and tender as all meek things be. I know he holds me high and aught that blooms or gleams on land or sea. And I would ever shine thus bright within his sight, and if I die, it will be so. For death's deep portals shed a light on the dear ones who pass below, that shrines them in enduring glow. And thus in fair eternal youth, with cheek undimmed and smile unworn, with eyes that never lose their truth, and lips whose speech is ne'er forsworn, I walk beside him day by day, life's long hard way. His hope in sorrow or despite, but in his joy a memory, as stars shine over us dim or bright, as beams the morn or glooms the night. Pausing, she stood with lifted head, turned towards the fiercely booming sky. Serene though death and anguish sped in every shot that hurried by. When hark, from where the noise and glare seethed up the stair, a sudden flash, a frenzied cry, and awful in his wild despair, that demon fronts us with the high red flame of conflict in his eye. Ah, God of grace! But with a bound he caught her form from off the door, and shrinking out, "The end is found," fled with her through the open door. I heard his footsteps as they rung. The shriek she flung to heaven in her extremity, and rousing, tottering, upward sprung along their wake. The earth rose, heaving like the sea. Down, down the stair they shook beneath, across the landing, out the gate, and forth into the flaming death, fled like a mad thing to my fate. A bullet struck me as I passed, a fiery blast swept by me, scathing cheek and brow, but heedless, reckless, onward fast as doom itself I rushed, nor knew I crushed the dying as I flew. They told me later that it was the very crisis of the fight, that even as I strove to pass, the barricade fell from its height. But I saw not. My gaze, my all was on that small, frail figure flying from my eyes, borne on through flame past rushing ball, up, up unto the topmost rise of those wild ruins 'gainst the skies. But stunned and deafened as I was, the silence which fell on the fray, as forth upon that tottering mass he leapt with her and stood at bay, is with me yet, as if a flood on rushing should in one wild moment fall back thrown, the very life chilled in the blood, and when he spake his words rang lone as through some wilderness of stone. Ha! And will you falter now? I heard him shriek with frenzier cry. Now, when fair freedom waits your blow to bow her radiant head and die. We do not falter, and he drew his blade and threw one frantic glance on Clarice's brow. Never, then come, and into view, raising the threatening arm, stood so with maiden eye bent on the foe. When hard beneath, around, above, a hurried cry, "On, comrades, on!" He holds them back, they dare not move, their leader seemed turned to stone. Vive la commune! And with a bound that shook the ground, a dozen threatening forms rushed by. I heard, through of my gathering swand, looked, saw in that same leader's eye our victor's tortured soul flash high. She sees him too, and o'er her falls a sudden light. Ah, heaven, she cries, do Frenchmen pause when duty calls because a single French girl dies? Rouse, Victor, rouse, but stunned, dismayed, he only swayed. One restless moment towards the strife, I saw her tremble, look for aid, grow firm, then smile and crying, life for honor, spring to meet the knife. The charm was broken. With a yell, the demon flung her to the ground, and in the sudden tumult, hell itself seemed bursting from its bound. But life and death were now to me as equal. She, the beautiful, the fond, the dear, had perished, and not even the cry of Victor in his grief could e'er rouse me again to wrath or fear. End of poem. End of The Defense of the Bride and Other Poems by Anna Katharine Green.